Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Glad to have you with us, as is always the case. We're brought to you today and every day by Big Willie's, Utah's Sports Bar. 1717 South Main, lunch specials every day. Tell them OC sent you. Go grab a sandwich, a salad. They always throw a crazy side, like a couple of wings with your sandwich. The sandwich is enough. The burger is enough. But there'll be the buffalo chicken egg rolls, or there'll be 4 chicken wings as a side. Whoo, man, I'm hungry for one of those lunch specials. Maybe I can get them to deliver again today. 1717 South Main. And if you're not watching as an order of habit on our YouTube stream at ESPN 700 Sports Utah or on the ESPN 700 app, today's the perfect day for you to start because we have a little bit, we have some new decor in the studio right over my right shoulder, so your left. We've got the neon sign, and I'm a big fan of neon signs. I don't know how you out there feel about neon signs. I'm a big fan of neon signs. And Big Willie's hooked us up, so boom. Sean O'Connell Show brought to you by Big Willie's. Glad to have him as a part of the show. Glad to have you as a part of the show. And glad to be able to bring you a fun show today. We got a little over-unders. Gordy Chiesa is going to join us at 11:30. Jerem Jordan, our first red and blue segment of this upcoming football cycle. Jeff Schwartz, I said we're going to catch up with Jeff Schwartz in the tease. That's going to happen another day now. Jeff is a busy man. He's got some travel to do, betting shows and things like that. So we'll get to it when we get to it. A start bench cut for you today, and I'm actually going to crowdsource a little bit. I'm going to need a little help, perhaps, for our start bench cut because, man, it's narrowing down who it should be that makes these lists is actually getting harder and harder as we talk about, the actual careers of some of these individuals or even just the single seasons that might give people, a case in being in there. So we'll get to it. We'll get to it on the start bench cut. A question that I have today sparked by some of what we discussed on yesterday's show, some of what has happened in the news, very tragically and unfortunately in the news, and sort of hauntingly given that we just had an hour-long conversation about this yesterday. But for, I think, pretty obvious reasons, my question for you is, on the Twitter poll at RealOC Sports, 877-353-0700 if you want to weigh in on the phone line or the text line. Are you letting your kid play football? And beyond that, are you letting your kid play contact sports, collision sports? As a parent, is that something you're even hesitant about? Is that something that you feel you don't get to make the decision on? Because it's not quite so black and white as that in my experience. And my experience, I'm not pretending is everyone else's experience, but I grew up in a family that had my grandfather was a college football player on one side. On my maternal side, my grandfather was a college football player, and I grew up with him as kind of my hero. And he wrestled, he boxed, he played football. He was actually Cal Poly was his alma mater, and Utah will be welcoming Cal Poly in week 2 of the season. First home game will be my grandfather's alma mater. I have his Cal Poly Letterman jacket hanging in my office at home in a frame, and this is like the 4th time fifth time the team that I've been around has faced off against Cal Poly, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, go Mustangs, but not today. In any case, my grandfather was a great college football player. Maybe he wasn't a great college football player. He was a college football player. He was in the era in the 1950s where you started both ways, and he played both ways, and I've said it many times on the air, he would always be kind of like, hey, man, why don't you just play when I was having a hard time getting reps at linebacker at the University of Utah, he's like, well, why don't you play nose tackle? Why don't you play D-line? and that era was so different. As a 215-pound guy, he could excel there. He was teammates with John Madden at Cal Poly. Anyway, my mom was not a fan of sports, probably because my grandfather was way too big of a fan of sports, and probably because my grandfather spent a disproportionate amount of time focused on my mom's two brothers and their sports careers. And so my dad came from a very academic family and had no reference, no background for sports, really, hardly at all. Didn't participate in Little League sports growing up, didn't have sports culture in his family. And so for me, I wanted to play because my friends were playing, and it was like I had to convince my parents that it was something I should be doing rather than the other way around. They were always very supportive of everything I wanted to do in terms of like trying things out. They had us in baseball and t-ball and soccer really young because that's what you do with your kids. But when it came to tackle football, my parents had no real frame of reference beyond my grandfather, and my mom had a complicated relationship with football because of that, right? And so I had to convince my parents that I should be allowed to play. Ultimately, it worked out fine. As I said on the show yesterday, I'm lucky, and we, as far as I can tell, I don't have a lot of the issues that some other people might have with CTE-related symptoms, at least at this point in my life. Thank goodness. And obviously, you know that I went from football, where, let's be honest, didn't take a lot of damage in college football because it was mostly practice stuff, and that's scaled back a little bit. And then I went into the MMA world, and that's a different animal, but I still think football's worse for your brain. I don't have a scientific reason to say that, but I still think, at least the way I played, the positions I played, the football is probably a little bit more damaging.
It's like, because you talked about boxing as well being one of those, the combat sport that's probably the most damaging for your brain, because you're probably taking more headshots in boxing. Maybe you're not. Than in MMA?
I mean, I'm sure we could probably look it up. I'm sure that there's more impact on your head in boxing. I don't know if it's like a drastically significant difference.
Yeah.
The issue with boxing, and the issue that has been brought up with boxing and that people have talked about with boxing for years, is that in boxing there's a reset with the 10 count. You know what I mean? So well-trained boxers, and it's true of MMA fighters as well, but it's less pronounced in MMA. Well-trained boxers will get knocked down or even get knocked like a flash knockout. You get knocked basically unconscious, right? You fall back into the ropes. The next punch or the next two punches or whatever kind of wake you back up.
I see.
Maybe you get a standing 8 count, something like that. But the point is, in boxing, fighters are allowed to recover, and well-trained boxers recover a lot faster than is really good for them.
I see what you're saying. So you're taking a lot more hits, period, whether it's to the head or other parts of the body, because you have more opportunity to recover and continue the fight than you do in MMA.
In MMA, if you stop defending yourself intelligently, which of course happens if you lose consciousness, or even happens before you lose consciousness in most cases, the fight's over. In boxing, I mean, you could spend all day finding examples of this, right? Guys, they turn their bodies into machines. That's the point of training, right? And what happens is they get knocked out and they're on autopilot. Their body still knows what to do, and it's a reflexive action.
Wow.
To keep the hands up, to stay standing. Sometimes boxers, and there's a trillion anecdotal stories about this, boxers, and it's true of MMA fighters too, but again, more common in boxing, boxers will have conversations with the corner, with the referee, with the doctor, and they're like, I'm fine. Let's go. I want to keep fighting. And then the boxer, after the fact, will say, I have no idea that conversation happened. I don't remember doing that. Now, that has happened to me in an MMA situation. I got knocked out in a local fight here. Shout out Hank the Vice Weiss. Still hate you for it. I got knocked out, unexpected knockout. I was the favorite in the fight, especially in the stand-up exchanges. He's more of a grappler. He faked a takedown, overhand right, put me dead out. Okay? I had a conversation with the doctor in the ring, told him I was okay. I sat down with the athletic commission, told them I was okay. I didn't need to go to the hospital. I walked back with help from my corners. I walked back to the locker room. It was at the Salt Palace Convention Center. And so it was like a 300-yard walk probably. Had to walk out of the hall, up an escalator, into a room. And where I truly regained consciousness was when my coach was cutting the wraps off of my hands. That's where my memory is continuous from that point forward. And I had been talking to these people the whole way, right?
That's insane.
So, and it's like, not because I'm not saying that like I'm so tough I can talk even when I'm knocked out. It's just like your body does that, right? You go on autopilot, and the point I'm trying to make is in MMA, you don't have the chance of standing back up and pretending to be conscious and then the fight continuing and you taking more damage.
Well, all of this, which, troubling to hear that you could do this. I'm sure it was after the fact you're like, wow, I don't like that I can fool people that I'm okay when I'm clearly not.
And maybe a bad example because I was like asleep on the canvas for a little while before that.
Yeah.
But the point is,
the fact that the big difference in what you're saying is even though that took place and it kind of troubling that you could fool people that you were okay when you were not. The fight was over while that was happening. And you weren't allowed to take more hits.
And in boxing, that is not true.
Yeah.
In boxing, there's been many, many examples of when a guy is not okay, but he's able to continue fighting. He's able on autopilot to continue taking damage.
He's probably having some of these conversations with his corner and not realizing that he had these conversations. Yeah.
And the tragic, unfortunately, rinse and repeat story in boxing is there's many guys who have come out of the fight after a brutal fight, after several knockdowns, sometimes no knockdowns, just an accumulation of punches, right? They'll go and they'll take a shower, and then they pass out in the shower and they never wake up again. And like that's something that is less common, far, far, far less common in MMA. I don't know what the numbers are in the last half decade or so, but there was a time when I was an active MMA fighter where I paid close attention to it, and you were averaging about 6 or 7 deaths in boxing per year. And that's a worldwide thing, obviously. That's not just in the United States. But also, that's just the most acute and dramatic and drastic of those consequences. That says nothing. That is 0% of attention paid to the guys who just, like, they don't pass, but they're handicapped by what happened to them. They're the CTE buildup. They used to call it punch drunk, right?
The mental illness side of things because of CTE or whatever.
One of the great sports movies I have ever watched. All of you, I encourage you if you can find it. I don't know what streaming service it's on, if it's on any. There's a great collection of stories. It's called Facing Ali. And it's all the fighters who fought Muhammad Ali in his prime. I think it was made either after Muhammad Ali had lost most of his capacity or perhaps even after he died. But it's a great show. It's really like celebrating kind of the golden era of boxing and some of these incredible epic fights and 100,000-person crowds and 65,000-person crowds and like cultural moments and all that stuff. And it's from the perspective of the guys who fought him and the relationships they had with him, right? And James, it's great to hear the stories. You know what's not great? Listening to the way that these 60 and 70 and 80-year-old boxers talk. Because you're like, I don't think that's how you would have talked if you didn't box.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to get too far afield here.
Yeah, big tangent with the boxing and MMA. Curiosity there for me.
Well, and it's important to note the difference of boxing and MMA and football And look, rugby, they've had a big head injury problem in rugby that they've tried to address on both the union level, meaning like the national and international competition level, and in the rugby leagues in South Africa, in Australia. There's a rugby league in Japan. They've really tried to
shout out Major League Rugby here in the United States.
Major
Utah
League
Warriors,
Rugby
let's go.
people they've honestly, rugby is they're a lot more strict about the rules of dangerous tackling. And that's something that obviously when you don't have equipment,
you got to be a lot more careful.
And they've done a good job of it, right? Rugby, there's been a problem. I don't know what the numbers look like in hockey. I know that, soccer, shockingly, like soccer has more head injuries than people think it does.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Chris Kamrani bring that up when he was talking about what Dr. McKee, I believe is her name, from BU, that is the lead researcher for CTE and head injuries in the country, if not the world. And how Kamrani was saying that she had cited soccer as a sport where this can happen. You are risking this even when you play soccer, which I was shocked to hear that too. So
are you, as a parent, willing to let your child participate in contact sports? And there's a lot, like it's a binary answer on the poll, yes or no. But I know that there's actually a huge spectrum here that you can't really do justice to in the Twitter poll world, where, well, yeah, I let my kid do it, but I don't like it, or no, I'm not letting them do it because they're only 11. When they get to 16, maybe I'll let them do it, or vice versa. Maybe, yeah, I let my kid play Little League football because at age 11 they're not moving fast enough and they're not big enough to be hurting each other yet.
And I don't let them do tackle, but right? Like that sort of thing.
And I mean, tackle, that's what the question's about.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
about
care
contact
if your kid's
sports,
playing flag football.
That's not a contact sport.
Like, but the reason I bring it up there's plenty to talk about in the sports world, but one of the unfortunate headlines today, after we had a big conversation yesterday, is that somebody walked into an office building in downtown New York City looking for the NFL head office and opened fire on and took the lives of 5 people, I think is the count right now.
It was 4 people, or maybe one got added, but as of a couple hours ago, it was 4 people, including an off-duty police officer. And as you said, got off on the wrong floor. Would have been NFL office employees, but none of them from, at least that have passed, from linked to the NFL, because he got off on the wrong floor. It was a financial services
and this
company.
This, by the way, is a person from Las Vegas, never played in the NFL, as far as anyone has reported so far, didn't play college football either, but was a high school football player who then blamed somehow, and we know that the mind doesn't work and connect properly when it's damaged, and had a 3-page note in his wallet suggesting that the NFL needed to be punished for his own battle with CTE. And again, I know that those two things don't jive and connect on a logical landscape when you're talking about someone who participated only in high school football, but a damaged brain you can't expect to operate like ours does. And
should be noted too that the only way to diagnose CTE right now is posthumously.
Correct.
So you can suspect that you might have CTE. You can CTE. You can suspect that people around you are exhibiting, because they might be exhibiting those symptoms that you've heard of or whatever, has it, but you don't know for sure till they've passed.
So there's a lot here to unpack, and there's so much nuance to all of it, and I barely scratched the surface of that nuance when we had Chris Kamrani on yesterday, but I wanted to put the poll question out there as we get ready for another football season. The Hall of Fame game is this week.
Yeah, we've got it on the station Thursday night at 6.
And
the open NFL preseason.
I am not standing on a soapbox, I promise you, about anything. I would be the last person to do so. I went from football to MMA. I went from playing linebacker and fullback, and newsflash, not exactly a finesse type athlete.
You're running into people.
And I went from that to being a fighter who never dodged a punch. Never met a punch I didn't want to hit me in the face. Okay, so I'm not wagging a finger at anyone. I promise you.
What is it that you said? You kind of had disdain for people, that friends of yours that would watch you fight and be like, "Oh man, you were getting killed." Then you're like, "I won."
Yeah.
He got killed.
Yes, I took a lot of punches, but I landed the ones that knocked him out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not this conversation is not about me. I'm just making the point that, like, look, there's a lot of nuance to this conversation, and I'm not trying to cast any aspersion on people who don't want their kids to play contact sports. I'm not telling people who do that you should rethink this. I'm asking a question.
Yeah.
Because we're about to sit down weekend after weekend from now until February, and we're about to celebrate this thing that in the dark recesses of our minds we know is potentially hurting at least a few of these people. I don't think the majority. I don't think it's the numbers tell us it's not even well, I guess it depends on what number I want to look at.
Yeah,
because
and the numbers change every day because it's a new field of research. So,
but look, of the brains from former NFL players donated to the brain bank, it's like a 95% hit rate that they have signs of CTE. And of the college players that have not been in the NFL that have been donated to the brain bank, it's like an 80% chance, if I'm not mistaken. However, that's not to say that each of these individuals had severe mental illness. That's not to say that any of them had such a drastic outcome as the one I'm talking about with this shooter in New York City. We don't even know if that person has CTE.
Yeah, we just know he claims to.
He put a note in his wallet that, like, this is why I need, like, something is related to this. I know it. And
yeah.
So, but we do know that there are risks associated now. As a sports viewing public, we can no longer be ignorant to this. We know it exists in boxing. We know it exists in MMA. We know it exists in hockey. We know it exists in baseball. There was the rookie for the Cubs a few years back who got beaten in the side of the head, and he never got to play again.
Yeah, and another guy whose career ended quicker than it probably should have was Mets legend David Wright, the third baseman. They actually just retired his number, I think, last weekend at Citi Field. Like, he had it was more than a season where he missed because of concussion he got from baseball. Like, and I don't think he got beaten in the head. I think it might have been a collision at home plate or something like that. But, like, yeah, severe head injuries can happen in just about every sport. Because of just about every sport, there's some contact, but certainly the obvious ones are football, combat sports, and hockey and lacrosse. Those ones that you're encouraged to hit people.
And the thing is, right, is again, I've asked this question of parents. Will you allow your student or encourage your student athlete or your young person to participate in sports like that? If your answer is no, then where is the line, right? Because, I mean, soccer is not considered a collision sport. Basketball is not considered a collision sport. Soccer head injuries exist. Dunny, our guy Brian Dunseth, who you can hear on these airwaves a lot, and we've talked to for years and years. He has issues with the concussions he sustained as a professional soccer player. Football, right? Not football, not strap a helmet on and use it as a weapon, soccer. So because you have to help your kids make these decisions, or when they're young enough, you have to make these decisions for them. Like, hey, that's too dangerous. Okay. Football's too dangerous. We've decided football's too dangerous. What about hockey? Nope, also too dangerous. Okay. What about cheerleading? Yes, cheerleading is fine. Oh, actually, no, look up the numbers on cheerleading. More severe injuries in cheerleading than in either of those other two sports I just mentioned. So it's like, how do you help make these decisions for yourself, for your spouse, for your family, for your kids? I've got 3 girls. I don't know what they're going to want to participate in. I feel like I'm probably going to let them participate in everything, and I know that there are a lot of risks. There's a ton of risks associated. Like, what if your kid wants to do motocross? Yeah. What are you supposed to say? It's your child versus a 100cc engine versus gravity and the earth. Like, what? Are you going to say no, though? I don't know.
It's tougher. It's tougher than the binary yes or no would suggest it would be, because there is, just like there is with everything, there's so much nuance. With me personally, OC, I would probably discourage my newborn son as he gets older enough I would probably try to steer him away from football, because it's not just head injuries. The guy, you blow your knee out.
Yeah.
You screw up your shoulder. You can do that with in a bunch of other ways too, but like it feels like it's a lot easier to do that in football. And so I think I'm going to try to steer him away from it, but at the same time, as you pointed out yesterday, you can't control what your children find passions for, and you can try to influence that by only exposing them to certain things. But like, as you get older, as your kids get older, as I understand it, the less you can control, right?
Well,
so
yeah.
About what they're exposed to. So your kid is my son is probably going to. We're certainly going to watch football. He's probably going to have friends who play football and say, "Oh, this is great. Why don't you play?" And he might develop a passion for it. And in that case, I don't think I can stand in the way of that.
Yeah, and by the way, James, you're a big guy. I don't know if your wife has large genetics in her family.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a lot of people, like, I'm going to make some assumptions here on the 2-month-old baby. Like, if you're a teenager walking around at like 5'10", 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", it's not just
150 to 200 something pounds.
It's not just going to be your peers that are like, hey, you should play football. There's going to be grown adults, coaches.
What are you doing not on my team?
Walking up to you at school and saying, hey, son, you should come out for the football team.
Absolutely.
That's going to happen, right?
And if that's something that he wants to do, I don't know that I can stand in the way of it. You kind of just hold your breath at every hit, right?
I guess.
And enjoy and you enjoy it. You enjoy it, because I will enjoy it if that ends up being the case, because I'm a big football fan, right? But it's funny you say you're going to have coaches and other people come up to you and be like, how come you're not playing football?
Yeah.
I didn't play football, which is surprising. Probably people who look at me like, you look like a football player. I didn't play football, but the head football coach one time, I'm walking coming out of PE. I'm walking out and he looks at me. He stops dead in his tracks, looks at me and goes, you want to play football? And I said, nah.
Yeah, see?
So, like, absolutely. I had the exact situation happen to me.
I could make a list of probably 20 names long of all the guys that I grew up with that should have played, quote unquote, should have played, that the coaches wanted to be playing, who didn't. Like, would have been better than me, but that's not how it played out for them. And
I did not play because my parents tried to influence me not to. It's just basketball was the sport we gravitated to, and I didn't really have an interest in learning many other sports. I just wanted to play basketball. So.
And look, the options for female football are pretty limited at this juncture.
Yeah,
maybe they will.
It's growing though.
It's growing. If my daughters are like gravitating more towards basketball and volleyball than football, I'm probably not going to be the one who's like, let's have you play football.
Yeah, or there's a lot more opportunities to play girls and women's hockey in North America. That always has been. So that could be, and there probably will be more now that there's an NHL team here. So that's a collision sport that they might have an interest to. It's certainly a harder question than a quick, I'm going to hit yes or no. I still kind of land on what I said yesterday. I think that with collision sports and combat sports in particular, you probably should take a lot of thought and take a long time to consider all of the factors, all of the risk factors before you just say, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. More
right now,
so than football or than basketball and soccer and other sports.
right now, 62% of the votes coming in on yes, I will allow my child to play contact sports. 37.5% are saying no, not worth the risks, and Brickman Williams says yeah, but probably not until later, 7th or 8th grade, flag football prior to that. I think that's a smart way to approach things. I think that's great. I also think if you put your kid out there in little gremlin football, it's probably okay too. I don't know. The thing that we all have to understand as parents, myself included, is like when your kid is young, 7th and 8th grade is probably when you start to, like, puberty is probably when you start to figure out, like, all right, my kid might have the necessary whatever, build, height, speed in order to excel at whatever your sport is. The crazy thing that you see is all these parents that at like 11, 9 are like, yeah, my kid's going to be like a scholarship player at the University of Utah. Or you're like, you are 5'8". Your wife is 5'4".
They're 9 years old.
What makes you think this? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, we were joking about this, I think, the other day. Brock Lesnar's daughter is dating a San Francisco 49ers guard. If they end up getting married and having a child, you can offer that child a scholarship today, all right? Just because we're playing the percentages here. Most of us, like, you got to kind of wait. And whether that means you don't let your kid participate in whatever sport until their body becomes something closer to what it's going to be as an adult or as at least a college-age athlete, I don't know. I'm not telling anyone what to do with their own parenting style. But I am asking the question, are you going to encourage your kids to play contact sports on the precipice of football season? It's a good time to think about how much we love the sport, and I love it probably just as much or more than you do, and whether or not that love is affected by the consequences for some, not for all. I'm not going to vilify football or the people who sell us football, or the people who field football teams or coach any level of football. I'm just going to say it's probably worth thinking about for all of us. 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. The show today and every day brought to you by our friends at Big Willie's at 1717 South Main. Gordy Chiesa next on Utah's number one sports talk, ESPN 700. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA guru, in a downtime for the NBA, if there is such a thing. Gordy, welcome. How are you?
Sean, I'm doing fine. Thank you. And that downtime, it's still going on. However, in about 10 days from now, that's when it's an invisibility line where most of the people will already sign contracts, and there'll be just one or two left. And the other people that want to get a contract with the NBA, they're definitely heading overseas. Usually the first 10 days of August, they decide to go overseas then.
Is there anyone out there right now who hasn't signed that contract that surprises you, that you thought would have already, found a destination at this point?
Well, again, it's Jonathan Kuminga. He's the guy that everyone's looking at with the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors recently offered him a 2-year contract at $20 million a year equals $40 million, and he's restricted free agent, and they rejected it so far. So he's out there right now, and then everyone's looking at Josh Giddey, a Chicago Bulls, also a free agent, restricted, and Josh Giddey's representation and the Bulls, they're not on the same page at all, and we'll see how that plays out, which means that Malcolm Brogdon, who's really a good player, is also on hold to see whatever those guys, where they go, he'll try to counter that and get to a different team then, away from the Wizards.
We talked about this on the show yesterday, Gordy, the Luka Doncic trim down. The cover of Men's Fitness magazine and, maybe some abs showing through for Luka, who's always been kind of a bad body guy. And I somewhat facetiously was talking about, there's a few reasons why this happened. This is like the post-breakup body where you're trying to make the ex jealous, the ex being the Dallas Mavericks in this particular equation. There's the, I think, more positive outcome here that he's around LeBron James on a daily basis, and LeBron sees that professionalism and is like, let me invest in my body the way that LeBron invests in his. But no matter what the reasoning is it going to have some kind of concrete effect on Luka as a player in the immediate future and maybe long term?
Yeah, very much. The answer is yes. When you're usually speaking, when you're an athlete, when you get lighter, you play better. Just generally speaking, you get lighter, and you're more agile on your feet. You're less susceptible to injuries. Now, Luka was hurt last year, and by him slimming down dramatically, he'll have more bounce to his game. He'll be able to play longer as far as at a high level and conditioning. And as Sean, also part B of that, him slimming down, is that he's saying to the Lakers that I'm worth next week when you guys sign me to an extension for 4 years, $220 million, that I'm serious about leading the Lakers post LeBron. So next week, Luka's eligible for an extension, 4 years, $220 million total. And that's part of the reason why, that he's serious about his conditioning. He's matured now. He's 26 years old. He's accomplished many things in sports, but never as far as being a champion. And that with the Lakers, he thinks he could help them go very deep in the playoffs. And by slimming down, it's indicated that he's serious about it now.
So we've seen this like extreme version of this. Even Enes Kanter famously got in incredible shape one year, and I mean they're always in good shape. But how sustainable is it for somebody like Luka, who that's not who he has been? I know he's still young, but it's not who he has been to this point. Is this something if you're his coach, if you're in that front office, you're looking at it and you're saying, yeah, this is what I can expect from him, not only for the next 6 months, but for the next 6 years?
Yeah, very much. Answer is yes. That's what they expect him to do. You're a professional athlete, and you have a chance to show greatness, besides individually, but to lead your team. And we know it's behavioral. You have to change your lifestyle, your eating habits. It's so easy to eat the wrong foods. They call it, quote, comfort foods. So you need discipline. And you need those around you that the professional cooks. Remember, these guys have their own cooks around them, and they should, because they can afford it. So there's no reason why that a professional athlete should be out of shape, because they have all the luxuries of people helping them to be in tip-top condition, also both mentally and physically. And obviously, we know what you eat is absolutely important as far as how you perform. And I've seen it with Karl Malone, when we had Karl with the Jazz, how he absolutely paid the price, and so did John Stockton as far as conditioning. And that's why those guys played at a high level for so many years, and that's LeBron James right now. And Luke is trying to use the same thing. Chris Paul also in that group. Chris Paul, again, he's his 20th year playing in the NBA at a high level as far as both offense and defense. He's in great shape. There's no as far as the easy path. You've got to pay the price both on the court, off the court, as far as conditioning.
Gordy, there's the Karl Malone end of the spectrum, and then there's guys at the other end of that spectrum that have similar outcomes. Karl Malone didn't have a ton of injuries. There's some guys that they don't look great, right? They're a little bit flabby, but they seem to be durable. You can't pull fat is the joke that people pull on that one. Is there anything to, a risk in getting too lean or anything like that, creating different, I guess, conditions for your body that make you more susceptible to injury?
Yeah, the answer is yes, there is. And that's why you need professional help, where those trainers, they understand each person's body individually and how we perform at a high level. And that's why, again, with these professional athletes, they're around the elite of the elite as far as medical staff and training staff. And that's why they're able to perform. The exception, there's always one outlier, and we love this guy from the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic. He's the opposite now. He still has that body frame that's a very uninspiring, but he's an incredible basketball player. And so he's the one exception in the present tense that can play at this high level and just bounce around in the lane and play outside. But he's the outlier.
Gordy Chase is our guest here for a couple more minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show. We've touched on this a couple of times in past conversations, Gordy. The television contracts, the broadcast contracts changing in the NBA. And for fans, that alters your perception of the product, and the broadcast might look and sound a little bit different. Obviously, there was a big outcry that people wanted, the TNT's halftime show to stay intact, and the people were given what they wanted there. How is the broadcast rights deal actually going to change the way we interact with and the way the NBA looks and sounds next year?
Well, our viewing habits will be different now. So we're so programmed into watching ESPN, NBA TV, and TNT. You mentioned about TNT. The show goes to ESPN intact with Charles Kenny, Charles Barkley, and a few guests as far as periodically. But now with NBC Sports and Peacock streaming, they bought rights very similar shown to the NFL, where now it's on every different platform. So just quickly, here's the main guys, the analysts for NBC Sports and Peacock streaming for NBA basketball: Reggie Miller, Jamal Crawford, Grant Hill, Brad Daugherty, Brian Scalabrine, Derek Fisher, Austin Reeves, and Robbie Hummel. And then in studio with NBC will be, and this caught my eye this morning, just announced it today, Vince Carter, Carmelo Anthony, and Tracy McGrady. So those guys will be in studio pre-halftime and post, and they'll be chopping it up. Now, the other partners will be Amazon, the big boys, Amazon Prime Video, those guys. That is Iron Eagle's elite voice, the play-by-play, which is absolutely sensational, and it's hard to imagine. But Kevin Harley is the second in that group. So they're both, it should be almost like co-one. But the analysts are going to be Stan Van Gundy, Del Curry, Steve Nash, Brent Barry, Dwayne Wade, and Candace Parker. And in studio of the pre-halftime and post will be Dirk Nowitzki and Blake Griffin. So those are the new partners that the NBA has. Plus now, obviously, with ESPN and ABC, that's the main focal point. And now they're negotiating with different people as far as being some of the analysts. But we know right now that Mike Breen, who's the all-time record, most ever NBA finals as far as broadcasting, he's the number one voice there. And Richard Jefferson's done a good job, and so is Tim Legler.
You mentioned Dwayne Wade is going to be on some broadcast duties. Now, There was
on Amazon, yeah.
Okay, so there was a question when Tom Brady was going to be doing broadcasting and wanted to get into the ownership group for the Las Vegas Raiders, whether there's a conflict of interest there. Obviously, Dwayne Wade is a minority owner for our own Utah Jazz, and now he's going to be doing some analysis work as well. In your mind, is there a conflict of interest when you're trying to play both of those roles?
No, there really isn't. That's the same thing that's in discussion with Grant Hill. Grant Hill is a minority owner of a small stake of the Atlanta Hawks. So whatever they worked out with the NBA office and the other governors, meaning the other owners, they worked it out, and that there's no conflict of interest. And so I'm assuming they did the same thing with Dwayne Wade. And again, those guys, they offer such an unbelievable perspective as far as what it takes to be at an elite level. So I know you love in the NFL when so-and-so is talking on the air and they describe perfectly what is happening and why it's happening. And then they say it in layman's terms. I just described John Madden in his heyday. And that's a great analyst that can describe things in everyday language, but is still very descriptive.
It really is what separates great analysts from just okay analysts. The folks that can simplify complicated terms, complicated concepts in the game enough for the average fan, but also speak to a fan who's a little bit more educated. It's a delicate balance, and people somehow find a way to maintain that balance and are really good at it in football and basketball, everywhere.
Well, football is the ultimate because you have a built-in chance to describe what's going on in between when you're in the huddle. See, basketball, it's more – most times it's a dead ball or the ball coming up the floor, and then the analyst is talking, then gets out of it, and then a play-by-play person takes over. And so in yesteryear was confusing where sometimes in jazz basketball there was a simulcast. So Hot Rod Hundley was doing the games on TV, but also with a radio description because they were on both. And then thank God they came to the senses and divided it up where Hot Rod did the games only on TV, and then they brought in a very talented David Locke to do the games on the radio about roughly, I'm guessing, about 15 years ago. So that's the beauty of it. And it's so important to enhance the viewership because you want to listen to that person of what they're saying. Did you
ever have a little itch in you to maybe try some broadcasting stuff, Gordy?
Yeah, the answer is yes, I have. A long, long time ago, in between jobs, I was an analyst also. It's called USA TV back east, and so we did some games there, and it was a good learning experience, and it helped me become a coach also later on, as far as when I got back into coaching, because again, you have to speak almost like in sound bites, because you have to get out of it, and likewise now this generation, you can't ramble as a coach. You cannot ramble on. The players can't process it. So we, as the adult in the room, we have to adjust to the players versus the players adjust to us as far as communication skills. And I say it all the times when I do these workshops with our coaches that you've got to be able to talk and get out of it, but you can't over-talk. And it's that unbelievable fine line.
All right, Gordy, do you have a list for us today?
My list today, Sean, I've been thinking about banging around, Sean, like throwing elbows. And so my list today is Utah Jazz career franchise leaders in total rebounds. So let's bang in the ring, Sean. Total rebounds wearing a Jazz uniform. Quickly, what are some of the attributes? 1, technique, and that's everything. Timing, physicality, positioning, multiple efforts, instincts, and foot speed, especially chasing down the long missed-point shots. So here's my list today. They are the top 10 Jazz career rebounders. Number 10, vastly underrated before I say his name, Paul Millsap grabbed 3,792. Number 9, the bouncy Russian comet, Andrei Karolinko grabbed 3,836. Number 8, our colleague often on the radio, Sean Big T, Thurl Bailey, 8th all-time, 3,881. Number 7, Rich Kelly, played back for the Jazz in the 70s and early 80s, 3,972. Number 6, Greg Osatek, 3,978. Number 5, at 6'1", 5th all-time, Most of his rebounds were chased down. Karams he won the foot race. John Stockton grabbed 4,051 rebounds. Number 4, vastly underrated, Derek Favors, 4th all-time in Jazz history, with 4,626. Number 3, Mark Eaton, 6,939. Number 2, the Frenchman, Rudy Gobert. He played for the Jazz for 9 years. He grabbed 7,119 rebounds, which comes to 11.7 rebounds per game. And the number 1 rebounder in history of Jazz franchise, I saw most of them throwing flying elbows in the lane, Karl Malone, with the Jazz for 18 season. Karl amassed 14,601 rebounds, which comes to 10.2 rebounds per game. In the present tense, probably Walker Kessler is going to join this list someday, where Walker right now is entering his 4th NBA season. Walker's got 1,808 total rebounds for 9.2 rebounds per game. Thus, Sean, let's battle in the lane.
Wow. Gordy, you're the man.
Sure, I know, Sean, you love to hit people as far as legally.
Here's the thing. I was not good at anything in basketball except for using my fouls and rebounding. And occasionally I would make a defensive play without fouling anybody. So I like that list.
Well said. I love it. Thank you.
Gordy, always appreciate your time. Look, basketball season, the downtime, we're not terminating our visits, but we're gonna scale them back for the rest of the summer. It sounds like starting when?
I think starting next Thursday, August 7th. Yeah.
All right,
so
cool.
Go one more week, because usually in the NBA, this week right now there'll be a lot of still signings yet. So our last day will be for this season will be next Thursday, August 7th. For the listeners, please listen in to Sean and I, and we've had a great time in the meantime.
All right, Gordy. Talk to you soon. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out. Bye now.
That's Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA guru on the Sean O'Connell Show. All right, I made some decisions, and the start bench cut is up on Twitter. Also at 877-353-0700. I'll tell you who you're starting, benching, and cutting next on the Sean O'Connell Show, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. All right, hot lunch coming at you on the Sean O'Connell Show. In about 5 minutes, we'll check in with Jerem Jordan for our first red and blue of the season. BYU, like Utah, starting football camp this week. Talk about how the expectations lay out in Provo after, of course, the big news in this offseason was that Jake Retzlaff, the presumptive starter, is now at Tulane after the scandal.
More like too lame.
You don't like Tulane?
They're fine.
Okay.
I just thought I'd throw that out. Now there's a former BYU quarterback there. They're a lot more lame.
Oh, fair enough.
OC. Yeah.
Oh, by the way.
But we're going to check in with our enemy, Jerem Jordan.
That's right.
Love this.
That's it.
I love red and blue time.
You like pretend hostility toward Jerem Jordan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have not played, by the way, Stansbury Park Golf Course yet, maybe this weekend, Tooele County's historic golf course at Stansbury Park, perfect combo of challenge, pace, and price. This is my kind of course because it's really going to get you mad. It's going to get you upset. There's water on almost every hole. The greens roll nice, okay? But you're probably going to go sail it over the green or come up short of the green into the bunker or something like that. It's the perfect course to go to and be talking trash on your friends in that foursome for their terrible round. You're probably going to have a rough round yourself at some point as well at Stansbury Park, but it's the perfect course to go out there and experience it. There's no long waits. There's no overpriced green fees. It's pure golf, 18 holes for $45 on weekdays, $50 on weekends. It's super easy to get to right off I-80, and it's become a go-to spot. So check out Stansbury Park Golf Course. Take your friends out there and just prepare to talk a little bit of trash, which is really what it's all about when you're golfing with your buddies. Great rates, gorgeous greens, minutes away, totally worth it. StansburyPark.gov/golf course. StansburyPark.gov/golf course. I'm cheap, so I want affordable golf. That's a great place to find it.
When if it's a tougher course to play, it sounds like, and if you're like you and me, if we're bad at golf anyway, we don't care.
It doesn't matter.
We'll have a good time.
At least it's like at least everyone's going to have a rough day instead of just you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of just me.
You'll have a rough time on the scorecard, but you'll have a great time otherwise.
All right.
Stansbury Golf.
Start bench cut today. It took me some time to decide who I was going to put on it because we're talking cornerbacks, corners. All right? In the Power 4, Power 5, the Pac-12 era. Start one, bench one, cut one. Clark Phillips III. Jalen Johnson, Eric Rowe, 877-353-0700. Eric Rowe, by the way, he snuck in there because 3 years at safety, 1 year as a corner, and then ended up as a staple on NFL rosters playing a position. He only played at Utah for 1 year, but he had a phenomenal season as a corner at the University of Utah. You want me to give you some numbers?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for some numbers. I'm a lot more familiar with Clark Phillips and Jalen Johnson's time at Utah than I am with Eric Rowe.
Okay,
so
Eric
I'm gonna need some numbers.
He finished his career in 2014, and again, this is his lone season as a corner. 59 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 interception, 13 passes defended at the cornerback spot for Eric Rowe. Okay? Clark Phillips, his best season at the University of Utah was actually his second year, 2021. 2020 didn't count, right? So he was still a freshman in 2021. 14 games, 63 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 2 interceptions, 13 passes defended in his best season as a corner. Jalen Johnson's best season as a corner at the University of Utah was 2018. That was his sophomore year. His junior year was still pretty dang good, but his sophomore year he had 41 combined tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, 4 interceptions, and 4 total passes defended. In 2019, he had 11 passes defended, so 21 total in 3 years for Jalen Johnson on the passes defended. 21 total for Clark Phillips III. 28 passes defended total for Eric Rowe, but 13 of those were as a corner because he played safety.
Do you have the pick six numbers on Eric Rowe's lone interception was on a pick six, I'm guessing. Maybe it was.
Clark Phillips had in his career 4 interceptions returned for a touchdown.
I think that's tied for the program record, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
For career pick sixes.
Jalen Johnson had 2 in his career.
2 very memorable ones.
And
too.
Eric Rowe had 1 in that.
So his one interception, he took it to the house.
He did take it back to the house.
Good for him. Yeah. I feel like Jalen Johnson, wasn't it a 100-yard interception return for a touchdown against Stanford in 2018, and then he had the even more memorable one, I think, that against Washington at Washington the year after in that great 2019 season. So only didn't have as many as Clark Phillips, but I don't remember all of Clark Phillips. I remember all of Jalen Johnson. So I'm starting Jalen Johnson.
Uh-huh.
He had a sack too, OC. Like those other guys, like Jalen Johnson was everywhere. And as I said, 2 very memorable, huge pick sixes.
Clark had a sack in his sophomore year.
Clark did too. I missed when he read that. But anyway, both those guys were everywhere. I'm giving the slight edge to Jalen Johnson. Just always made big plays, as did Clark. But Jalen was even more different, right? And he showed that in his career in the NFL too. Clark's had a nice start. Jalen Johnson's like all pro at corner, which I know we're only taking college into consideration, but it just tells you Jalen's just even at an even higher level than Clark, as good as Clark was. I'm benching Clark and I'm cutting Eric Rowe. I think for me, this one, the longevity at the position separates those two even more so than in other start bench cuts between them and Eric Rowe, even though Eric had a fantastic single season.
Can I give you another name that I think people might throw at me? He's unsung, underrated. Zamiah Vaughn.
Yeah.
Zamiah Vaughn, he played 3 years at the cornerback position at the University of Utah. His career numbers look like this, okay? 144 total tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 24 passes defended. That's Zamiah Vaughn.
That's really good.
Okay? His tackle number, better than Jalen Johnson. His tackle for loss number, better than Jalen Johnson. His interception number, not quite the same as Jalen Johnson. Same thing with Clark Phillips. Clark had 9 total interceptions in his career as a corner at the University of Utah. Eric Rowe had he beats all these guys in total tackles. He had 261 total tackles, but again, 3 of those were safety years.
His safeties typically do get a lot more tackles than corners, so that makes sense.
He had 8 tackles for loss. He had 1.5 sacks. He had 3 interceptions in his career. One of those was a pick six. But Zamiah Vaughn, he matches a lot of these numbers, and we don't talk about him the same way. The other 2 guys were All-Americans. Clark was a consensus All-American. And Zamiah Vaughn was like barely getting all-conference recognition.
He was really good. He was the guy after Clark left. Is like now he's the number 1 corner, and he now not as good as Clark and Jalen in that regard, but he more than held his own as the number 1 guy. Really good number 1 cornerback. That's it. Deserves an honorable mention at the very least.
Start 1, bench 1, cut 1. Corners in the Power 4 era. I went Eric Rowe, Clark Phillips, Jalen Johnson. If you wanted to substitute Zamiah Vaughn for Eric Rowe because he played 3 years at the position instead of 1, I wouldn't be mad at you.
It costs you 99 cents to substitute, like at your favorite fast food restaurant, but you can do it.
It costs you 1 James Peterson bonus point.
Which is equivalent to 1/100th of 99 cents.
Yes. All right, got to take a quick one here. We come back with some red and blue. Jerem Jordan joins us to talk a little Cougs. If you can't stomach it, just come back with us later. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. I know that some people have a hard time with our next guest because he is true and blue. We love Jarom Jordan. This is Red and Blue on the Sean O'Connell Show, our first one of the football season as we check in on the team down south. Jarom, how are you?
Sean, what's up? It's been too long. How you doing, man?
I've been really good. You've been enjoying the summer with the fam?
Yeah. It's been relaxing. It's been good. I feel refreshed. I feel ready for fresh cut grass and sweaty pads and breaking down fourth string nose tackles. And I just feel like Ed Helms in The Hangover. We are back.
And we are all holding our breath for October 18th, Utah down at BYU. A lot is going to happen between now and then, obviously, including camp for both of these teams. Give me your overarching thoughts, your expectations in the broad strokes for BYU football, given the context of Jake Retzlaff's departure, what they've had to deal with as a team this offseason, et cetera.
Yeah, biggest conversation is, hey, who's the quarterback? And you got a three-man race. McKay Hillstead, Trayson Bourget, Bear Bachmeyer are the three. Hillstead, Skyridge kid, Utah State, was in the system last year with Trayson Bourget, kind of battling his QB 3 and 4. Obviously, Gary Bohannon and, of course, Jake Retzlaff not there anymore. So Hillstead and Bourget are your two guys that come in with some starting experience. Hillstead had 4 games. Bourget had about 8 games at Western Michigan. And then Bear Bachmeyer has a really high upside, recruited by Bama, Notre Dame, Texas, A&M, Oregon, Michigan. So high-profile kid that didn't get the starting quarterback job at Stanford. They fired Troy Taylor. He's out. He comes over. He's going to get a look too. So he brought his brother Tiger, a receiver that maybe some Utah fans are familiar with as well, who played the last 2 years at Stanford there. So that's the big question. The other question is, okay, BYU replaces 2 of their tackles, the left and right tackle, Isaiah Jada, who was on the team previously at Colorado, had some experience, got in a little bit last year. Andrew Gentry is a guy that comes from Michigan that really feels like can plug and play in there and be good. They return the interior 3 of Lapuaho, Mitchell, Makasini, Leusa, kind of those guys. They feel good about the O-line. Of course, Carson Ryan comes from Utah. He's tight end 1. TBD on who's in that group. Wide receiver feels pretty experienced and good. Chase Roberts, one of the best in the country, is back. JoJo Phillips, Parker Kingston. There's some other names in the mix, but you got some good experience there. Defensively, replacing 7 starters, but from the Big 12's top defense statistically in a bunch of categories. But Jay Hill played a lot of guys, a lot of reps. And so when you say, hey, Crew Wakely left for Purdue at strong safety, well, Talon Alfrey and Raider Damuni played a lot. So you return 3 guys that played it free in Walt Prastis Satwali. You return Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker. 2 of your 3 linebackers who feel like NFL guys. Harrison Taggart, middle linebacker, left for Cal. Fialia Sarah plugs in. They feel like his ceiling's higher than Taggart's. Cornerbacks, hard to lose. The starting 2, they were pretty good. And Jacob Robinson, who's making an impact with the Niners as an undrafted free agent guy. Mark Collins is out. They like Evan Johnson, Maury Bamba. You lose all 4 starters on the defensive line. That feels like a big deal. Obviously, the conversation around Keanu Tonavasi is a massive ad, of course. But they like some of the guys who have been in the mix, playing a little bit as backups. And we'll see how that group fits in. D-tackle, a little thin outside of Keanu, it feels like. And then the ends, they're looking for playmakers. So that's the broad strokes. I guess special teams, Will Farron's back. The punter, Sam Vanderhaar, is back. Parker Kingston is the punt returner's back. TBD with kick returner with Keelan Marion going to Miami. So a lot of experience, excitement, motivation. But ultimately, I think if BYU has decent enough quarterback play, I think they can compete in the 8, 9, 10 win category in the regular season.
So there are a lot of people in my sphere, of course, generally Utah-centric, that there's almost a sigh of relief. Oh, they've got some quarterback questions at BYU because everyone knows this team is incredibly dangerous in other places. I don't think that it's always a loss when you lose an experienced starting quarterback, and especially when it's unexpected like this, there's an added layer to it. But from the numbers standpoint, and I know that's not telling the whole story of the position, but from a numbers standpoint, I look at the 3 names that you just mentioned, and I say, why can't those guys give this BYU team the exact same numbers that Jake Retzlaff gave them. Maybe less moxie, maybe less experience, maybe less confidence and mastery of the offense, but the numbers weren't overly spectacular. I guess it's a complicated way of saying, like, you didn't lose the best quarterback in the conference. You lost the guy who was solid for you and didn't make the same mistakes that people worried he might make most often. And he helped the team win, but he wasn't the reason the team won a lot of games.
Yes, no, I agree with you, and I've heard some staffers say, "Hey, we feel confident that exact point. One of these guys, or a combination of these guys, whatever that looks like, they're not going to do the dual thing. That's not what I'm saying, but yes, can they produce a 59% passer who throws for 2,900 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks? Yes. Now, the thing that you can't replace, like you mentioned, is the experience that Jake, one, has in the offense, and two, he's been in the fight in Power 4. Hillstead and Bourget played in G5 systems. They're now in Power 4. Bear Bachmeyer is a true freshman. That's just a ton to ask, especially for a team that is in win-now mode. Sean, if BYU was on the uptick and they were feeling like they were getting better, it's different. You could tolerate something and go, hey, 8-4 regular season, building, this is good. Got high-profile recruits coming in the next couple of years kind of thing. No, this is a win-now situation. This is – you don't have – I don't know that BYU has Jay Hill forever. Like, he's too good of a coach. You have to seize the moments that you have this staff and this group of talented players right now. And if Jake Retzlaff was the quarterback, we'd be talking about BYU competing for the Big 12 title. That is not the conversation externally. Now, internally, they feel like, hey, that people don't feel like we can do it again. So they have that chip on their shoulder, and certainly it's a fair question given how important quarterback is. I failed to mention running back, by the way. I should mention L.J. Martin back. Joni Moa had some really good moments last year. Enoch Nawahine, and then some unproven guys. They're hoping Hinckley Rapati gets an extra kind of JUCO year. Not sure on that one. That may or may not happen. If he joins, that's good at running back. But to your point, can one of those guys put up those kinds of numbers? Yes. If the defense can be as good as they were last year, and the special teams, BYU's got a lot of playmakers, skill positions back. That guy doesn't have to win BYU a ton of games. But, like you said, Jake Retzlaff had a few moments where he was pretty clutch. Obviously, against Utah, he's got to make a couple throws there. Oklahoma State, that's a massive drive. There's a fourth down there. There's a throw to Darius Lassiter to win against Oklahoma State. Didn't make it against Kansas. But BYU goes 4-2 in one-score games. Utah went 1-5. That was the difference between those two seasons, in my opinion, was obviously Utah was trying to find the offense. Feel like you got it with Ja Beck, as we call him down here, running the show now. One-score games matter. You can always just make it a two-score game and make it so it's not close. But there will be close games, clutch moments. Which BYU quarterback can make it happen in those situations? They have yet to be in the fight, so it'll be new to them.
You failed at first to mention the running backs. I'm kind of glad you did. I'm scared of the running back room at BYU more than I'm scared of any other offensive position because –
more than receiver. Interesting.
I just feel like Moa is maybe one of the most underrated players in the entire Big 12 conference, and you've got a 1-2 punch with him in L.J. Martin. If your offensive line is even good at all, those two guys can make massive, massive gains and be huge problems for every defense.
Yeah, LJ is a guy that, if healthy, should be a 1,000-yard back. He's 5.2 a carry, super solid. He's not a game breaker. Like, he's not going to hit homers. He'll hit doubles, if you will. But he is super solid. And then Sione Moa surprised a lot of people. 5 yards a carry last year, 3 touchdowns. Apparently, Kansas State, was trying to tackle with hands of butter. Like, he was bouncing off fools, sliding through everybody. He's impressive because he's not the biggest dude, but he plays big. And so – I like those two. If Hinckley Rapati is eligible, that would really help that group a lot. Because Enoch Nawahine is there. He scored a big touchdown against SMU. But yeah, you need like 3 dudes that you're like, okay, we can get through 12 games with kind of these guys. And he plays a lot of 21 personnel. We saw 30 personnel, 3 backs, no tight ends against Houston at the end of the year. They're getting creative. Aaron Broderick is. So I'm interested to see what that depth looks like in that position.
Jerem Jordan is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's red and blue time. We're talking about BYU, and the rivalry game is played on October 18th. You mentioned the defense, and that's kind of really where you have to start and end a lot of the conversation with BYU football, even with that quarterback situation for me. because that was the driving force behind the somewhat surprising, but whether you're surprised by it or not, really incredible season that the team had last year. One of the things that this defense was so good at is, in my opinion, hard to replicate. The turnover margin and the takeaways that they created. I mean, there is some luck involved there. I don't like to take credit away from any team that can make that happen for themselves. But, there were times even, Kalani admitted it down at Big 12 Media Days. He's like, man, we had a lot of situations where the ball bounced our way, and staying that far on the positive side of the turnover ledger is a difficult thing to do year over year over year. So even though I think this defense is going to be at least as good as it was last year, can they replicate that in your mind?
It's a big ask. It really is, because BYU led the country. They were tied with Texas, who played a game or two more than BYU, with 22 interceptions. And then they had 29 games, 7 fumbles. I mean, that will equalize a lot of situations. BYU goes to SMU, and they turn it over a couple times, and then SMU coughs it up. BYU gets takeaways. Inside the red zone multiple times, they force field goals. BYU wins that game 18-15. That's a playoff team that BYU went and beat on the road because of their ability to take the ball away. I mean, it was an unbelievable thing. Yeah, you got to be in position, but you also need to be lucky. All of it is combined. I'm with you. Third in turnovers game total in the country. Margin was top 25 at +8. Offense turned it over a little too much, frankly, in the 20s there. But I'm with you. If you can approximate that number, like let's say BYU has 17 picks. The good news is BYU basically returns all of its safeties. And the backup corners that will be the starters, they played quite a bit. And then, of course, your top 2 playmakers and rushers, frankly, are Isaiah Glasgow and Jack Kelly. Jack Kelly is a ball. He's on the Nagurski watch list this morning for best defensive player in the country. Isaiah Glasgow is the closest thing we've seen down here to Kyle Van Noy and Fred Warner. He is just stat stuffer. He feels like a 4th or 5th round outside linebacker, NFL draft pick next year. The student makes play. So I'm excited. And Jay Hill calls a great game. He has a great scheme. Before the Colorado game, which we felt like might be a 55-52 kind of shootout thing, he made Colorado look silly. And he was actually pregame talking to Spencer Linton, and he was smiling. Like he knew that they were going to give Colorado some problems. So in Jay Hill, we trust down here. He's done an amazing job. And like I said, as long as BYU has Kalani and Jay Hill, I think they can do some real special things here.
It feels like up here at Utah, there's a lot of folks who are like gearing up for, hey, this is the last year that you have Kyle Whittingham on the hill. I think most people feel bittersweet about that. I guess there's probably some contingent of fans that are ready to turn the page. Don't count me among them, not just yet. But is that the feeling at BYU about Jay Hill? You already mentioned you don't get to keep him forever. He is too good of a coach to keep in Provo as an assistant, presumably, if a big time job offer comes, and I think one will. Are the fans, and I guess more importantly, the other coaches and the players having that in the back of their mind that this is maybe the last year you can take advantage of his expertise?
I don't think so. I'm just being super present about it and realistic, because I just think he's an unbelievable coach. Like, he is a Power 4 head coach. He should be at some point, and he's too good. Like, if this BYU defense keeps playing like they did last year, there's no way he won't be. So I cherish the moments we have with him. Like, at some point, I hope Kevin Young's here 20 or 30 years, but the reality is probably not. Like, every season, just enjoy greatness when you see it. And it's rare you see and go, that player or that coach is truly great. I just think the world of Jay Hill. I think he's unbelievable. I think they have a great staff. BYU retained its entire staff. That's very rare from an 11-2 team. And now all these coaches are back. They're building, like, the 26th recruiting class is top 20 in the country. BYU's never had kind of that momentum. And that's all because you have great culture, great coaches, you're winning, competitive NIL, all the good things. So that's just me personally with Jay. I just think he's awesome, and I cherish the time he's calling the defense, because when he's calling it, I feel like, hey, BYU's got a chance here, regardless of who this quarterback is. BYU's not going to walk into too many games this year where they have the better quarterback on paper, but they'll have the better defense, and that gives you a shot. Is that what it feels like to be a Utah fan? You always have the better defense?
You always have the better defense.
You always have
and
the better defense.
was that a shot at the quarterback situation where you probably not?
maybe mildly.
Yeah, look, I mean, that game, October 18th, the teams don't get to focus on it yet. I do, because
we do. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
my
think about it.
Yeah, it's my favorite game of the year every year. And by the way, it's massively important for Utah to win this year for so many different reasons, and they got to go down to Provo to do it. What do you think October 18th looks like? And of course, I'm asking you this question in July.
Yeah, who knows what the path will be for both these teams to that situation? What has been better than expected? What has been underwhelming? Does BYU have its quarterback figured out? Is that person is it smooth sailing, right? Is Dampier running all over the field like they're hoping? Is Jason Beck and the crew installed that offense to that degree? Is the defense and Lander Barton and Smith Snowden and the boys, are they doing their thing? Like, I think it could be a really, really compelling matchup. What I hope, honestly, is that it's a massive swing game in the fortunes of whoever goes to the Big 12 title game. That's what it always used to be in the WAC and the Mountain West and whatnot. Is like, you got to win that game because you need the edge to get to the championship game in this league, and that would be awesome. I think, obviously, two great programs, and it's going to be fun. I can't wait to see kind of what happens before then, in the game, after the game. The only thing that's tough is there's so many teams in the league, it's going to come down to some dumb tiebreaker. And it's just that killed BYU last year, and it was their own opportunity to win, 2 of 3, and they lost 2 of 3 and didn't make the title game, blah, blah, blah. So that's the only thing with the league that's sort of tough is like, all this expansion. It's not truly kind of, yep, we beat them, we're in. It's, well, hopefully so-and-so wins because this dumb tiebreaker applies.
Not only that, but it's okay to talk about now. I promise we're going to get really, really sick of talking about Big 12 parity and how everyone in this league can beat everyone in this league.
I'm sick of it already.
I spent enough time in the Pac-12 to know exactly how that feels, where you're just like, oh, yeah, this league has no elite team that crushes everyone else. So who knows who's going to end up in the playoff. Right now, the betting odds even are all over the place. Some books have it Kansas State's the favorite, Utah's second, Arizona State second, Texas Tech up there, Baylor up there. BYU, before the Retzlaff transfer, was in that conversation, even in the sports books. Now they've fallen kind of to that second tier. I've already made my thoughts on that pretty clear. But outside of Provo, who do you think is the scariest team in this Big 12 conference?
It's a great point. It's hard to look at Arizona State and evaluate because Cam Scatterwood was such an important piece of their offense. Yet Sam Levitt's back. Jordan Tyson's like a first round, second round kind of receiver, and they returned 9 starters on both sides of the ball. It's hard to not think that Arizona State has some real juice. Iowa State and Kansas State feel like they're super consistent. If Avery Johnson takes that next step for Kansas State, feels like offensively they would be hard to beat. Iowa State super solid, hard to lose 2,000-yard receivers though. Utah always feels like an offensive way from being right there if they're not there, right? And so if that clicks, like that could be dangerous. If BYU gets decent quarterback play, you'd like to think BYU's in the mix, but that's a massive question. But it feels like, Baylor's pretty interesting. Finished on a 6-game win streak in the regular season last year. Lost the bowl game, but they returned Sawyer Robertson and a 1,000-yard running back. So it is pretty open. And it's not good for the Big 12 to have this much parity, by the way. There needs to be an elite team that you kind of say, hey, they're probably getting the benefit of the doubt of an at-large bid if they don't win the league. Because what we don't want is what happened last year. You're just a one-bid league. We need the 2 in there. Then when it goes to 16, you got to push for a third. So I would like to see a team or two kind of emerge as one of the top teams, but I think it's going to be difficult because you have a lot of good to very good programs. Is there a great program right now in the league? I don't think so quite yet.
How much are we going to be talking about Colorado? They made sure we talked about them yesterday. I thought we were going to get this bomb drop type news, and it was happy news. I'm glad that Deion's cancer free. It wasn't the football press conference I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean that one depends too on what are they going to get from the quarterback position. Caden Salter was unbelievable at Liberty 2 years ago, and that was good last year. But is he the guy, or or is the stud freshman Juju Lewis going to be the guy, the 5-star? Like, that kind of all depends. You lose Travis Hunter. There's a lot of losses there. Deion doesn't have a kid on the team. Like, what's the motivation? Of course he's motivated to win. Come on. But I think they'll be interesting, but I don't see them as a contender. But yet again, last year we weren't talking about Arizona State. They went from worst to first in the poll. I agree with the idea, by the way, not to do a preseason poll to teams. I think that was smart because you're trying to get that second team in. I think that was a good move. I also want to get rid of the AP preseason poll. I don't think that helps us. It's fun for marketing. It's fun. Hey, we beat so-and-so early in the season. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter. Like the college football playoff poll, we wait till October before that comes out. The AP provides some context, marketing, whatever. But in terms of actually being rewarded for what you did, Arizona started too far back, right, in the pack to kind of catch up. I'm hoping the Big 12 can get 2 teams in, albeit at like 11-2 or whatever, because it's just hard to – no one's running the table in this league.
Jeremy, I look forward to our conversations every week as we will continue red and blue, to the chagrin of some, but to the delight of so many more.
They don't have a choice in the programming, but you can tweet at Sean O'Connor. Sean OC, yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's going to be fun to chat. I appreciate it.
All right, look forward to it, man. Thank you for your time, as always.
Thanks, Sean.
Jeremy Jordan. That's your picture of what BYU is going to look like this year. We'll get a weekly update. It'll not be much more than that. You are probably not liking my sentiment and certainly not liking Jerem's. This BYU team is going to be a factor in the conference championship race. They just are. Their defense is too good for them not to, even if it's disastrous at the quarterback position, which I don't think it's going to be. Their defense is just too good and too well coached. They are going to either be a team that beats somebody who's in that conference championship race, or they're going to be in that conference championship race. And October 18th is one hell of a test for Utah. The Utah football schedule lays out pretty nicely, but Arizona State and BYU back-to-back, with BYU being a road game, that is tough, man.
Yeah, and I love our red and blue check-ins every week. Jerem makes it a lot of fun. I cannot wait for both of these teams to be competitive at the very least. Once again, I kind of lamented at the end of last season on the show, OC, with you, that I might have aired it as a grievance, in fact. I just want a year where they're both good and nationally relevant, because it makes things so much more interesting here locally in college football. I know that there's certain fans that get hot and bothered by the trash talk from the opposite fan base, but that just makes it more fun, guys. Like, when your rival is good, it's more fun. So you can secretly hope that BYU is good when they don't play Utah. It's okay. It's okay. And it makes that game much better, and look, even though it usually is pretty good anyway, no matter what the situation is.
You want to win over your rival to mean something. Like last year, if things go very slightly differently, if Cam Calhoun picks that off, if the referee keeps the flag in his pocket, whatever, if you make a stop on
You're
the
still going with
drive,
that, even though Todd Newcomb and Jeff Triplett both said it was the right call.
They have to. By the way, the screensaver on this studio computer right now is zebras.
Is it really?
It's very strange.
Wow. Someone's listening.
And look, I said it back then. I'll say it again. You know, the call by the referees is disappointing for everyone in that stadium and sucks. The ability to make a play to change that game and leverage the outcome in Utah's favor was still there, and BYU made the plays, right? If you had beat BYU last year, broken the undefeated start to their season, that's a meaningful win in a rivalry game, right? For BYU, after a decade plus of misery, going back-to-back in the rivalry game was meaningful for them.
When, like, they broke the 9-game streak at home, they still had a big losing streak at Rice-Eccles Stadium. So I'm sure for BYU fans, for the players in that locker room and the coaching staff that's aware of that I'm sure that was huge. But if that hadn't have been the case, beating a mediocre record-wise rival, I mean, that's not as big a deal as it would have been beating a rival who also had a chance to win the conference like you did.
And when Utah goes down to Provo this year and beats BYU, you're actually going to hope that that's like a solid BYU football team, that they win all the other games outside, because that looks good on Utah's resume, and that makes them a more compelling team for a college football playoff bid if they can win the Big 12 Conference, which I mentioned this with Jerem. There is just a random sort of turnstile in the sports betting books. Kansas State right now in all of the relevant books is number one in betting odds, okay? Plus 500 to win the conference championship. Beneath them, it's Texas Tech, Utah, Baylor, or Arizona State, and not a lot of separation. And they just rotate who's in the top position, the third position, the fourth position, the fifth position. It's wild.
Yeah, because now less than 2 weeks ago, Brian Brown and I were telling you, as you were guest on the show when you were on the road, I believe in South Africa, telling you that it was the opposite. Utah was the one as the betting favorite in these books, and now 12 days later, it's Kansas State. It's very interesting. And we heard Phil Steele say it's one of those 3 or 4 teams that should win the conference too.
And by the way, we have no new information in the time between 2 weeks ago and now. If camp had started and they were just like, and Vegas was like, oh yeah, we found out that, Kansas State has a secret transfer that they brought in, or that Arizona State, Sam Levitt got hurt on the first throw of camp, now we can change our odds. It's just like, it's just rolling around. It's just based on money coming in and what's not. It's really it's an odd deal. All right. We're way overdue for a break. Another watch list is out. There's not just one Ute, but 2 Utes on this one. I'll tell you who's up for which award in college football this year. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92 on FM. Junk mail update for you on the Sean O'Connell Show. Keelan McJunkin, Assistant Athletic Director for Strategic Communications, also known as the SID for Utah football, sent the email. Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano have been added to the Outland Trophy watch list. 50 total players on the Outland Trophy watch list this year.
Really narrowing it down.
Utah's got 2 of them. 1 in 25 chance that a Ute wins this bad boy. I like that.
So that's best offensive lineman?
That's best lineman.
Best lineman. Oh, so offense or defense?
Yes.
Okay.
You can win you can win the Outland Trophy as a defensive lineman. Jason Buck at BYU did it as a defensive lineman. Utah has the 2. They're one of 13 programs with multiple players on the watch list. Alabama's got 3 guys.
Oh, my goodness.
Oregon's got 3 guys. Ohio State's got 2.
Ohio State's got all 8 to 10, right? Got all 9.
Penn State's got multiple on here. I'm seeing 2 from Penn State as well. There are 10 preseason watch list guys on the from the Big 12 conference. There are 10 of the total 50 that are defensive linemen.
Oh, okay.
So it's more likely that an offensive lineman is going to win this one.
That it seems to me, and maybe I'm off base, I haven't tracked it, but it seems to me that an offensive lineman typically wins the Outland Trophy, right?
It's the only offensive lineman award, really, that
besides the group one that what's that one called?
The Joe Moore Award.
The Joe Moore
There's
Award.
also the Remington Award for the best center.
Okay, so there's 3 that linemen can win.
It's effectively a tackles award, if we're being honest. But there have been, there's been plenty of defensive guys who've won it. Let's see. If we go back, just talking about the recent history of the award. Last year, it was Kelvin Banks from Texas. In 2023, it was a D-tackle, Tavondre Sweat from Texas.
Okay, yeah. He was good.
The Michigan center won it in 2022, and that is...
They had an outstanding offensive line.
He was the first center to win it since 1982 when Dave Remington, who the Remington Award is named after, won it.
All right.
So... yeah, since 1982, only one center has won the award, and it was Olusegun Oluwatimi, the guy from Michigan. Jordan Davis from Georgia won it in 2021. Alex Leatherwood from Alabama won it in 2020. Doesn't count. Penei Sewell, Utah high school product, won it in 2019 as a sophomore, as a true sophomore.
Shout out to Desert Hills Thunder.
Yes, sure. So actually, wow, this actually surprised me. In recent history, the D tackles have over-indexed. You go through the whole history of the award, and it swings a little bit in the favor of the offensive player. But you go back basically to 2005. Let's see how many. We'll say in the last 20 years. I wonder how many of these guys you could name, James, if I wanted to. The D think of D tackles.
Well, okay, I'll tell you one that seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
Ndamukong Suh.
Yes.
Nebraska.
Okay,
was that 08?
That was 09. That was 09. Think of another one who's kind of a no-brainer. If you base it on his NFL career, he was the next defensive tackle to win it.
Oh. SEC?
No. Think of someone who played West Coast NFL football and is considered one of the best defensive players in the history of the league.
Oh, my gosh.
Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald won
it.
Aaron Donald.
At Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
Ed Oliver from Houston won it, and Ed Oliver didn't end up having like a super stellar NFL career. Quinnen Williams from Alabama won it in 2018, so back-to-back defensive tackle years. Jordan Davis from Georgia, Tavondre Sweat from Texas.
So, yeah, there's a fair amount in recent years.
A nice little sprinkling in. If you go back to, that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, There's 7 in the last 20 years of defensive tackles. All right?
So it's starting to go in their direction a little bit there. Yeah, wouldn't it be something if not only one of them wins it, but they're both finalists when you're talking about Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomo? Because right now, we talked about this with Watch List. There's 50 guys on this list. Like, cool, thanks for writing me in as along with all the other offensive and defensive linemen in the country as a chance to win this award. But once you get to December or late November when they start actually deciding this and giving out and publishing the finalists, it would be sweet if both of them were finalists and only one of them can win. Who knows if one of them wins it, but if they're both finalists at the very least, I mean, what a feather in the cap for this program.
When do you think the last time a current Big 12 school, the current Big 12 teams,
the 16 that are,
when do you think the last time one of those schools produced the Outland Trophy winner was? Current Big 12.
Okay.
Not Big 12 at the time of when they won, but current Big 12 schools.
Yeah. 2015?
1993.
Okay. Way off.
Arizona nose tackle Rob Waldrop won it. Aaron Taylor won it at Nebraska in 1997.
Not current Big 12, doesn't count.
That's right. Jamal Brown at Oklahoma, not current Big 12. Ndamukong Suh at Nebraska, not current Big 12. And Tavondre Sweat, I guess Texas was still in the Big 12 when he won it, right?
Yeah.
In 2023.
It was their last year there, but not current Big 12. So, Nebraska, those Nebraska guys, those were Big 8, Big 12, whatever the name of the conference was in the 90s.
Will Shields at Nebraska won it. Zach Weigert at Nebraska won it. Nebraska's had a bunch.
That's one of the reasons why Nebraska was such a powerhouse until about the year 2000 was because they just dominated the line of scrimmage, right, OC? Like, it does not surprise me that historically they've had a bunch of these guys that won this Outland Trophy.
Dave Remington won it twice at Nebraska in 1981 and 1982. Okay. Dean Steinkuhler won it in 1983. So Nebraska had 3 years in a row where they produced the winner.
So Remington, it's only 40 years is a long time, but it's only been less than 50 years since he played. Some of these trophies have been, like we talked about the Maxwell Award. He played college football in the 1890s.
Yes.
So that's surprised me a little bit. I mean, Remington must have been that guy if he played that recently in the early 80s to get a big-time college football award named after him.
Yeah, I mean, being a 2-time Outland Trophy winner, there's not a lot of 2-time Outland Trophy winners.
And apparently not a lot of centers that have won the Outland Trophy.
Not since him.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. The outstanding center of the year award would be named after him. But I would have guessed he played a lot farther back in the past, OC, not in the 80s.
So Spencer Fano has a legitimate shot to win this award because he's a name that's already on people's minds and on people's tongues. Caleb Lomu would have to have like the best year in the history of offensive line play because people are just now becoming aware of him.
Yeah, we were talking about breakout players versus guys who burst on the scene and we learned their name.
Like
nationally Caleb Lomu they're expecting a breakout year from now, even though he's broken out as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, he's already a great player.
Yeah.
Spencer Fano, though, is the guy he was a first-team All-Conference player last year. He was on All-American list last year. He's on preseason All-American list. Lomu's starting to enter that conversation, but these awards are all based on conversation and confirmation bias in a lot of cases, right? If Spencer Fano is healthy all year long and Utah's in the hunt for a Big 12 championship, he's going to be a semifinalist for this award, then he's going to be a finalist for this award. And then as the schedule condenses down and people are only watching conference championship games and they're only watching playoff games, if Utah's involved in those, the people who decide this are going to be looking for Spencer Fano and by extension a little bit Caleb Lomu. But that's when people are really making the decision on this. And they want a name that they've already heard. It's this familiarity thing that we all as human beings lean on. So he's got a legitimate shot to win this award if Utah has the offensive year that we hope they can have, and if he has the healthy year that we all hope and pray that he has. And by the way, Utah's overdue for one of these. Utah State's got one, and BYU's got two. So Outland Trophy needs to be a thing for the University of Utah.
No Outland Trophy winners in the history of Utah's program.
Not for Utah.
That surprises me because of recent years, how good, since Jim Hardy's been the offensive line coach, how good the offensive line has been. Also, that 2019 defensive line, Lecky Fotu, John Pennicini, like Bradley Anai, like that was.
Ends don't get nominated for the Outland Trophy.
Yeah,
but
like that defense, those defensive tackles were some of the best in the Pac-12.
I mean, Star
Lotulelei
had a shot at an Outland Trophy.
So the ends don't get considered?
No. Garrett Bowles had a shot at an Outland Trophy in his 1 year. If you'd have stayed another year, Garrett Bowles would have been.
Maybe he wins the next year.
He probably would have been on, like, at least on this list. I mean, to narrow it down, be like, there's 50 guys that people are aware of right now. And you got to beat Oregon's guys. You got to beat Penn State's guys. You got to beat Ohio State's guys. You got to beat Alabama's 3 guys that are on this list. You're going to have a really, really good season at Utah for Spencer Fano or Caleb Lomu to have a shot at this.
Is there because offensive linemen and sometimes interior defensive linemen, you don't necessarily, unless they go to your favorite school, you don't necessarily know who they are. Who are some names that you recognize from this list that maybe our listeners would recognize from other schools?
Isaiah World is the transfer to Oregon that a lot of people are saying it's either him or Fano that is the best tackle in the country this year. And so that's one that you're probably going to want to pay some attention to, at least. Francis Mauingoa at Miami is a person that we talked about in recruiting circles for a long time, and now he's really bloomed into being one of these guys at the college football level that you got to pay attention to. CJ Fite from Arizona State is on this list.
What a name.
He's a Fite. But CJ Fite he was at Big 12 Media Days. He's supposed to be the best defensive lineman in the Big 12 Conference this year. I think that there are going to be several people that are gunning for that exact honor, but you're going to want to pay attention to him. And the same is true of Lee Hunter, who is one of the huge gets for Texas Tech in the transfer portal. So there's a couple names on here that you would probably recognize just as a college football fan. And then the rest of it, you just sort of rely, because this is the hardest one for the average fan to gauge.
Yes.
Like, who should be winning the Outland Trophy? Your eye is almost never on the players winning the Outland Trophy until the replay.
Even you, for me, as a guy who doesn't watch it the way former players watch it, more of a casual fan, I see defensive linemen more than I see the interior defensive linemen more than I see. Those guys stand out to me more than the offensive linemen do. But even those guys, like, you're seeing wherever the ball's going and the pass rushers.
That's right.
Like, that's about it. And you would be going, well, of course you're seeing the tackles in if you're looking at the pass rushers, but I don't necessarily notice how good the tackles are doing. I just see how good the pass rush is doing. So it is a very hard one for fans to be able to figure out who should be winning this award.
Jordan Seaton at Colorado, by the way, and Dante Corleone. Dante Corleone, one of the coolest names in the Big 12 Conference, one of Cincinnati's great players, one of the only great players of Cincinnati, if we're being honest. But Jordan Seaton was, if you remember, Deion Sanders, when he landed at Colorado, he had this recruiting history where he'd already convinced 5-star guys to go to Jackson State.
Yeah, FCS.
And Jordan Seaton was the number 1 recruit in his class on some rankings, and Deion got him to come to University of Colorado. He was the number 1 offensive lineman, and some people thought the number 1 best overall player in that class, and Deion got him to come to the University of Colorado, and he has stayed. I promise you Jordan Seaton could have gone anywhere he wanted in the transfer portal after Shador's gone, after Travis Hunter is gone. Jordan Seaton could have been like, all right, that was fun. I'm going to Ohio State now. I'm going to Alabama now. I'm going to Oregon now. He has stayed at the
Going to
University of
Utah
Colorado.
now because
Well, one of the only places he wouldn't want to go because he'd be in a battle.
yeah,
Because they have two great starting tackles. So just move Seton down inside and play guard. Let's do that.
yeah.
Anyway, keep an eye on that Outland Trophy list. We'll give you updates as the season progresses. Before we take a break, a reminder to all of you gentlemen, and if you're a lady listening, they've got something for you at the Steel Vault as well. Right in the heart of holiday, a medical spa with truly comprehensive treatment options for you. You need some red light therapy. They have the red light therapy bag, the Elysium treatments. I went and did the red light therapy. I don't know all the science behind it. I just know that the cellular regeneration is something that you can actually feel, and that's only after one treatment. I should be more diligent. I should keep going back and make it a regular part of my health regimen. I have not. That's my bad. It's not the fault of the folks at the Steel Vault. 801-878-9976. You can also book your consultations online at steelvault.com on the big Book Now button. If you're worried about your hormone levels, go to the Steel Vault. Let them check it out. If you don't like the way that your hairline is creeping backward and you want some hair replacement treatments, go talk to them at the Steel Vault. Maybe it's just something like the crow's feet or the frown lines that you need to get taken care of. Guess where I'm going to send you for that? The Steel Vault. Comprehensive treatments available at a very classy, very peaceful, very happy spot to be. Take your spouse, take your significant other, make it a date day or a date night. SteelVault.com or 801-878-9976. And as always, tell them OC sent you. All right, we're going to double up, and we're going to get to Hour 3 next on the Sean O'Connell Show. Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700. The start bench cut today is Utah football corners from the Power 4, Power 5 era. After some deliberation and debate internally, I settled on Clark Phillips, Jalen Johnson, and Eric Rowe, who, of course, 3 years at safety for the University of Utah, and then one really great year as a corner as well. I'm fine if you want to replace Eric Rowe in your start bench cut with Zamiah Vaughn, because Zamiah Vaughn had a sneaky productive career at corner. Throw away the 2020 season. He was a safety then anyway. You can even throw out the 2021 season where he was still playing safety. In 3 years, he played 14 games, 13 games, and 12 games as a corner. 25 tackles, 53 tackles, and 40 tackles. 1 tackle for loss, 5 and 5. A half sack and 2 sacks for him in 2024. Half sack in 2023, I should say. 2 interceptions as a corner and 20 passes defended as a corner for Zamiah Vaughn. Pretty damn good for a guy who doesn't get nearly the love conversationally as those other guys. Didn't have the interception numbers, certainly, but, I mean, he's right on par with total pass breakups with guys like Jalen Johnson and Clark Phillips. That's lofty company to be keeping at the cornerback position if you're Zamiah Vaughn.
It is, and like we said before, it's certainly deserving of an honorable mention. If there are those of you listening that go, "Oh, he was better than Eric Rowe," or I don't think you can say he was better than the 2 All-Americans in Clark Phillips and Jalen Johnson. But if you want to substitute him for Eric Rowe, just one James Peterson bonus point, you can substitute him out.
Yeah,
if you
that's
want.
how much it costs.
Eric Rowe, though,
Eric Rowe is a corner. His lone season as a corner, he traded all the tackles, right? Well, he didn't even trade that many tackles. He still had 59
Still is a tackling
tackles.
machine, yeah.
59 tackles as a corner is bananas. I mean, that's a crazy number. Clark Phillips had 63 in 2021, which is also an absolutely insane number. He went from in 2021, Clark Phillips had 63 tackles. In 2022, he had 24 tackles. Now, part of that is the way teams are attacking the Utes with him on one side of the ball versus not. Part of that is him following the best receiver for the other team to different sides of the field, things like that. But, man, you're pushing 50, 60 tackles as a corner. That's really something. Jalen Johnson, his best year, he had 41 total tackles as a corner, and Zamiah Vaughn's best year, he had 35 total tackles as a corner. So these guys, great players. 877-353-0700. Start one, bench one, cut one. Corners from the Power 4, Power 5 era, and it's Jalen Johnson, Clark Phillips III, or Eric Rowe, who really took to that position playing it 1 year for the University of Utah, and has obviously built a very long and successful NFL career on top of that, which is we don't do enough justice to the incredible difficulty of not only making the league, but staying in the league. I mean, you could spend every day of your show an hour on just that, on how many guys were great college football players who just couldn't cut it in the league. And I'm talking great college football players. I'm not talking guys that are like decent, they were solid. I mean, Jason White, the former Oklahoma quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner, got like exactly 5 seconds in the NFL.
Yeah, one of the days that Scott Mitchell was filling in for you recently, OC, he talked about this, about the Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks and how historically you could say most of them did not end up being good NFL players. John Gruden went on in his podcast. He talked with the former Miami Heisman Trophy winning quarterback whose name's escaping me right now from the 80s, I believe.
Coretta?
Yeah. And he asked him just a question that only John Gruden could ask, a guy of his standing can ask. He just asked him point blank, how come a lot of you Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks weren't ever good in the NFL? He kind of just asked him just like that, about as bluntly as that. And they had a good conversation about, hey, man, college is a different, NFL is a different level. Obviously, the situation you get drafted in matters. But, yeah, so many quarterbacks who won the Heisman in particular. Jason White's a good example of one. Sam Bradford spent a decent amount of time in the league, but he wasn't that good.
Well, he never lived up to the contract. Remember, he was the last of the inflated signing bonuses, number one draft pick signing
before
bonuses.
they put the rookie
before
salary
they put a pay
cap
scale
or
in
pay
there.
scale on. Yeah.
And he never lived up to that contract. Even when he was good, he never lived up to being paid more than a lot of the top veterans in the league did.
I mean, Tim Tebow.
Tim Tebow is probably the best example. It's hard because there are some people who are NFL fans, and then there are some people who are college football fans, and then there are people who are football fans who like to watch both. And unless you were a fan of both, you really don't have the proper context for Tim Tebow. Like, he had one moment in the NFL where he threw a touchdown pass that helped him win a playoff game, right? Yeah. But a lot of Tim Tebow's NFL career was just like, the dude's not that good.
But we're going to keep giving him chances anyway.
Tim Tebow as a college football quarterback, and more importantly, just a college football player, he was absolutely deserving of the Heisman Trophy, but he was as impactful of a college football player as we have ever seen.
Yeah, you could argue you could make an argument for him being the greatest college football player of all time.
It's wild.
I'm not sure that he is, but he's I think in the most recent in the 150th season, he was a top 10. He was named to the top 10 on the official 150 team, maybe even top 5. He was honored at the college football playoff. How many guys they had on the field there? Like, he was that good in college, and Florida was that relevant mostly because of him.
I'm looking at the ESPN put out a top 150 list.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. They did it in year 150, 3 or 4 years ago, or probably longer than that.
And here's the tough thing about comparing across eras, right? So their number one player was Jim Brown. Jim Brown had 8 interceptions and 26 touchdowns to go with 2,000 rushing yards. Jim Brown, I don't know how you call Jim Brown the best player in college football history overall when his career numbers don't even match Barry Sanders' single season record at Oklahoma State. It's, again, how do you compare eras? Jim Brown is the reason people love him is because Jim Brown always left you wanting more at the NFL level. And also, he just was a freak of nature everywhere he was. We don't know if we ever scratched the surface of his true potential as a player because the game was so different back then. They've got Herschel Walker as number 2. Herschel Walker had more than twice as many yards and twice as many touchdowns as Jim Brown, but somehow ESPN has elevated Jim Brown above him. Bo Jackson, number 3. Archie Griffin won 2 Heisman trophies. They have him at number 4. Jim Thorpe, how do you compare someone who played from 1907 to 1912 to anyone in the modern college football world? Red Grange is number 6. Do you know when Red Grange played, James?
I have no idea.
In the early 20s.
Okay.
Right? Football was a different thing back then.
Yeah. I mean, guys like Thorpe and Grange are names that you hear as college football fans, as football fans, but that you don't necessarily, unless you really do a deep dive, you don't really know why you know those guys. Right. So it's okay to put just out of like a respect factor, we're going to put you in the top 10 or whatever, wherever you're going to put them. Jim Brown, kind of the same thing, although he's played a lot more recently than those guys. So, you at least know he was a great running back, right? Out of respect, you put those guys near the top 10. I'm not sure, like you said, I'm not sure how you can have guys whose numbers completely dwarfed theirs behind those guys.
I mean, you've got again, no disrespect to any of these individuals because we truly don't have the context for it, but Number 13 on the list is Doc Blanchard. I'll give you 100 James Peterson bonus points if you can even tell me the position, the school he played at.
Let's go. Doc Blanchard sounds like a mean, nasty center, offensive lineman.
Unfortunately, he's a running back.
Running back, okay, and he played for Army.
That's true.
Oh, let's go.
You got him.
What was the last part?
Army at 19.
When he played?
Yeah.
The 40s, 1945.
Oh, what? Did you look this
No,
up?
I didn't.
James.
I
Be
got
honest.
the school
James.
and the year? Are you kidding me?
Be honest with me. Did you look this up?
No, look. I got
Okay.
boring
James, if you're watching on YouTube, James is showing like
I got boring radio station website up here.
Okay.
Radio
Doc
station work
Blanchard.
website.
running back Army 1944 to 1946.
Let's go. I didn't get the position right though, so it's not that impressive.
It's
Okay?
pretty impressive
Calm
still.
down.
That's a hell of a guess. So he had in those 3 years, he had 1,666 rushing yards. He scored 38 touchdowns and he intercepted opposing quarterbacks 7 times.
That's the other part of this that maybe another reason why these really old school legendary guys probably get elevated over some of the modern players is they played both ways, right? And they put up numbers for their era, really impressive numbers both ways. So that you have to factor in, but at the same time it's like what we talk about because the NBA, who's the GOAT, has been such a big part of the pop culture around the NBA. It's like when we talk about, okay, George Mikan, who dominated when it was like basically all white guys playing in the NBA, unathletic white guys playing in the NBA. Like, out of respect, maybe you put him in the top 30. But then you look at it specifically and you're like, okay, you're putting him ahead of Charles Barkley or whatever, wherever you end up landing him. Like Chris Paul is not as good as George Mikan. It's like it's hard to show those guys, to give those guys the respect that they earned for how good they were in their era. But then also without going, yeah, but there's no way they're better than any of the guys that are playing today.
Okay, so here's the thing. You kind of have to put, if you're going by the list that ESPN published, when was this? We decided this was a couple years ago.
Was it 2020 season or the 2021 season? Whenever the 150th season of college football was.
This was 2020, January 13th,
Okay.
2020. All right. Jim Brown was judged by a panel of 150 experts to be the greatest college football player of all time. This was in 2020. He did play both ways. So Travis Hunter has more yards produced offensively and more interceptions than the guy they put at number 1. So is Travis Hunter the greatest college football player of all time?
I guess so.
I mean,
if you're saying a guy like Jim Brown who was outstanding both ways in his era, I guess you put Travis Hunter. I mean,
Jim Brown has Travis Hunter beat by 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
But Travis has more yards and more interceptions and is playing in an era where indisputably the competition, the whole thing is much more difficult now. So Travis Hunter, best college football player of all time, perhaps I'm not trying to hot take anybody here. I'm pointing that out to say, like, we may have been witness to it last year and the year before. Truly something historic. Just based on even these comparative numbers, right? And you don't always appreciate it when it's happening, just like I'm sure people in the 50s didn't fully appreciate Jim Brown for what he was going to be in football lore. By the way, Travis Hunter, for those of you who've been paying attention to NFL training camps, Travis Hunter is spending most of his time on defense in the NFL right now.
He is doing snaps both ways, though, in practice.
Correct.
So there were a lot of people that were like, no way they try to – Jacksonville does that with the NFL. At least in training camp, they're doing that.
There's no reason in training camp not to. I guess if you're trying to limit injury risk and things like that, but you invested a lot of capital with a number one or your first round draft pick into a guy. That's a lot of money guaranteed with that now. You better find out exactly what that person gives you. And that's Utah football is about to start camp. BYU football is about to start camp. Utah State football starting camp. You have to find this incredibly delicate balance as a coach. And as fans and as media members, I wish we could go watch and see how these things flesh themselves out. No longer allowed. Never probably going to be allowed again. But that training camp is a time, just like spring ball is, where you have to figure out what you've got with some of these players. And in the NFL, this is the first option. This is the first opportunity for the Jacksonville Jaguars to see exactly what they've got with somebody like Travis Hunter. For every team who spent a first-round draft pick on somebody to say, all right, I know what you were able to do at the college football level. That's why we gave you this vote of confidence. That's why we put our faith in your abilities and in not in only your ability that you showed us in college, but your ability to continue to develop, to translate that to more success at the next level. But you got to find out in training camp. And it's something that is going away in other pro sports, or it's being so carefully approached in other pro sports. And I'm talking to you, NBA, where you're just like, there's this bubble wrap philosophy where, oh my gosh, we got to make sure we don't spoil the investment.
Heaven forbid the 18th overall pick in the draft gets hurt in summer league. Oh no, what are we going to do? Looking at you, Utah Jazz.
At the end of the day, there has to be a time where the rubber meets the road. And if it's me, if I'm the GM, if I'm the coach, if I'm in college you got GMs and coaches now. If I'm the person who has put this player on my field, but yet have yet to see them in competition, you don't have to figure out what you got in Spencer Fano. You know. You don't have to figure out what you got in Caleb Lomu. You already know. You kind of do have to figure that out with Devin Dampier, and you spent some time doing that in spring football, and they were letting him do things in spring football that the cautious Ute fan probably would have been like, no, don't. Like, they weren't making him live contact and telling people to tee off on him, but they were letting him run around and do the crazy stuff and jump over bodies and all that, and you kind of have to do it. And so at the NFL level, yes, Travis Hunter, let him play both ways. Let him return a couple of kicks, see what you've got. For the University of Utah, where I'm confident, I'm probably more confident than all of you are, that Utah's going to put together a really solid year this year. But there are still questions that have to be answered, right? And the only way to answer those, and I know fans are so shell-shocked by what's happened the last 2 years with the compilation of injuries. Remember that Utah's training camp last year, they came out relatively healthy. It wasn't until actual competition started that the bad luck started to happen. And I think it is bad luck because of the nature of a lot of those injuries. If you go back a couple of seasons ago, feels like ancient history now, but remember when Utah was going down to Florida, SEC road game, swamp, open the season, you've got high hopes, they've got high hopes. Interception thrown by Cam Rising at the end of the game unfortunately makes it so you don't win. The problem with being in that situation was you had been too careful in training camp, so people didn't tackle. They weren't able to tackle. They weren't tackling well.
How many 20-something missed tackles in that game?
Which is such a gross number for a Kyle Whittingham defense. And so they had to make adjustments, and then everyone was like, well, now you went too hard in training camp. You have to find out what you've got. And the way to find out what you've got with players who are still question marks is to let them play football. And you got to let them play football in limited doses how they are actually going to be expected to play football. If a player that you brought in to be a pass rusher is only allowed to rush the passer, and then tag off at the end. You don't know if that guy can finish his sacks. Like I'm talking Cash Dillon, okay? Big-time recruit out of Corner Canyon High School, came in, had that Great Dane puppy body. You got to put some weight on him, right? This year should be ready to start making a couple plays for you. Maybe he's not defensive end number 1. Maybe he's not defensive end number 2. He might not even be number 3, but I expect to see his hand in the dirt and him playing. You got to know if that guy can not only rush the passer, beat the guy blocking him, can he finish? You know how many times you're allowed to do that in spring ball and at training camp?
Hardly ever. Yeah, hardly ever.
Ever, right? Like you have to know if that guy can finish.
You know, you joked about how the Jazz ought to name you the head coach when they're tanking because they don't need a good coach.
That's right. You need a bad coach.
You need a bad coach, right?
I would be the worst one.
I feel like we need a bad quarterback that you're like, yeah, go ahead and tee off. He's not actually on the roster, just like a ringer quarterback, like someone to stand up. We just want to see if our guys can finish tackles, all right?
Can I tell you something? You have those guys on the team. They're called walk-ons.
They're called walk-ons.
That was the Ferrari for a while, okay? That was Luke Pittari. You know how bad it sucks? Dude, so this was my high school career. I thought I was great. Nobody on our team was probably that great, but you think you're good because you're starting both ways and you're getting like some preseason or some postseason honors, whatever, right? And so like you're as a junior and senior in high school, when you're a solid player, like you've got some of what you're seeing in college, where it's just like, all right, you don't have to do any of the crazy stuff, okay? Like we already know you're good, you're fine. You've established yourself. All right, cool, thanks. You still got to run, you still got to do conditioning and all that stuff, but like, people are not allowed to cut block you in practice, maybe. One of my first practices in college football freshman year as a walk-on, literally we were cannon fodder for cut blocks. Like, okay, walk-on linebackers and safeties, come over here. We're teaching our running backs how to cut block at full speed out on the edge. So, like, the technique was, see this cone? Take an angle, run to that cone. He's going to take an angle, run to that cone, and he's going to dive at your knees. You know how sobering that is when you're an 18-year-old who thought that you were valuable and a good football player, and it's just like, hey, we're going to let the older guys, the bigger guys, the fully grown men, they're going to dive at your legs while you're running full speed.
And you know what? If you get hurt, whatever.
Yeah, and they're just like, and they're just, and by the way, they don't want you to take on the cut block properly. They don't want you to like post your arms and your hands on them and try to keep your feet out of the way. They don't want you to do that. They want you to pretend like you don't know the cut block is coming. So that's an extreme version of how humbling it can be.
And I'm sure I'm sure they don't do as much of that nowadays.
I bet they don't do it at all.
They probably don't do things like that at all. But yeah, like they need. Unfortunately for the walk-on quarterbacks, for the fourth and fifth string quarterbacks, going back to what you originally said about you need to know if a guy like Cash Dillon can finish tackles in the pass rush, can get home and take the quarterback down. That's your role, as the guy to be taken down by the end. You want to make sure can do it.
It's fine. I'm not mad about it anymore. Like. Anyway,
what, 20 years of therapy, and you're good.
Yeah, you know, right. All you do is you just you do something else, and then you convince yourself that you're good at that. Whether it's true or not, doesn't matter. You just got to be able to convince yourself.
I'd say you got a belt somewhere that in you had $1 million at one point that said you were pretty good.
Pretty good is fine. Pretty good is good enough for me. All right, don't have to be great at anything. If you're pretty good at stuff, and by pretty good it means you can get paid for it.
Yeah,
that's good enough for me.
See, I unfortunately resigned myself to that in a lot of areas, especially athletically. Like I mentioned before, unfortunately did not play varsity level basketball. Would have been a dream. Would have been the dream at the time to do that. But like I had to learn. It's funny. Spence and Porter talk about playing against future NBA players and how that humbled them and said, "Oh, that's when I realized I'm not very good at basketball or football." Like for me, it was like when I got cut my junior year of high school from the JV team.
Yeah.
So it's like
there's always a time.
You gotta resign yourself. I've had lots of practice resigning myself to. Let me just be good. I don't have to be great.
I'll tell you, I can thank Chris K. Moyatu for my ultimate wake up call in realizing that I'm not at the level I need to be here. And I say that while still believing in some weird part of my brain that I should have had more opportunities to be on the field more. But even if that had happened, even if I had been penciled in and put in as a starter or whatever, there was always going to be that level of player on every team that I played against. And that's a different sort of human being, if they're even human beings.
Yeah, I mean, I still have, if I allow myself to think back to high school days, I still have guys in my head. I'm like, I was a better basketball player than that guy.
Yeah.
But it's like
Yes.
the coaches disagreed or whatever.
And by
fine.
the way, that's another funny thing about this whole deal with now there's NIL components to it as well, but just with the playing time currency, right? Is yes, I can I'll sit around a campfire with my old buddies that were all walk on nobodies, right? And we'll be like, yeah, but we were better. So and so kind of sucked. If they would have put us in, we would have had more tackles than him. Maybe true. For some of us, probably not, but maybe, right? But there was always going to be a Chris K. Moyatu on that other team that was going to tell you, oh, you might have been better than so-and-so, but you're not better than me, and I will destroy you. Imagine how many guys had to go up at some point against Pittsburgh, right? You're playing Pittsburgh, and Aaron Donald is on the other side of the ball. You're playing against Pittsburgh. You are a Big East school at the time, I guess. And you're so you're good, but you're not Big Ten. You're not Pac-10 at that time. You're not SEC. And you're just I can do this, man. I'm the best. And then Aaron Donald, who ends up being a generational Hall of Fame level talent in the NFL, is in front of you. And you're just oh, okay. Now, Utah has probably 4 of those guys on the team right now, maybe more, that are that litmus test for everyone else on the team. That you could be Cash Dillon, I'm going to use your name. Shout out to you. All right? Cash Dillon, you might be incredible as a football player. You were a great high school football player. You might be an awesome Big 12 football player. You might be going up against Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano in one-on-one pass rush drills every day and thinking, I am terrible at this. Because there's just levels to every game.
Yeah.
That's also something, by the way, that you have to figure out as a coach. My best friend is an All-American high school wrestler, okay? I think I've told this story before. I wrestled him every single day at practice and got beat every single day at practice, over and over and over and over again. I probably scored 10 total points on him through an entire season of wrestling practice, which is great because then you go up against guys and those guys aren't as good. But it's also not great because you never win in practice. So you never learn how to win. You're never doing you're not good because that might be happening at Utah football practices in these one-on-one pass rush drills. All of your pass rushers might think that they're terrible because your starting left tackle and your starting right tackle are going to be first-round draft picks.
They're all nation, right? All American.
So Logan Fano might actually be super awesome and think he's terrible. I don't think that's true with Logan because
he's a veteran, college football veteran. He probably gets that.
He probably knows that. Wow, okay. When I'm actually on the field against mortals, I can do this.
Yeah, he's his takeaway, a veteran like him, his takeaway is probably I'm just excited we have those two on our team.
And that is the right. That's the right stance to take. But I would love to, and maybe when we get Devin Dampier in here for our visits,
which should be in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. We're going to get him at least, hopefully, one time before the first game, and then we'll get him every week during the season.
We'll get him once before the first game. We'll get him during the season. Very much looking forward to those conversations. Everyone on the Utah staff that I've talked to, everyone on the Utah State staff that was at New Mexico, everyone I've talked to about Devin is just this kid is incredible. and we've had a couple opportunities to catch up with him, and he seems like an awesome guy. So very much looking forward to those conversations. But I actually look forward to having like this conversation with him.
Yeah.
Because I want to know if there's anyone that has done that to him. It's more likely that he is the one who does that to other people, but I want to know if there's ever been like I can't throw that ball near that guy because that guy is something like Teo Johnson is a dude that you have to treat differently than everyone I saw in the Mountain West Conference, everyone that I saw at New Mexico practices. That guy moves different. Smith Snowden is a different level of player than what I'm used to, so I can't do that thing where I put the ball now next to my hip and I try to juke him out because instead of missing me, he punches the ball out and that's a fumble and whatever else.
Did Devin say it was he and Lander Barton? Didn't he say at Media Day those two are the ones talking the most trash?
Those talk trash
to each
back
other.
and forth.
So Lander Barton might be that guy too. Although if they're talking trash, he may not admit it. Also, going back to Logan Fano and call back to Media Day with that one too. Spencer Fano said he's won every battle. So
we got to get both of them in here at one time.
We do.
All right,
that was so amazing. He says, I love this. No one can dispute me.
That's right. It's like, that's fine. I can say whatever I want. We got to take a break. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. updating the poll we put out this morning, and I acknowledge that there's not nearly enough nuance to the question. As a parent, will you or do you encourage and allow your children to play contact sports, especially football? 65% of the responses coming in as yes, 34.4% saying no, not worth the risks. The reason we started this conversation today, well, really the conversation started yesterday when Chris Kamrani came on, and we had a great conversation with him about Greg Newman's story and the role that CTE appears to have played in the downfall and eventual demise of a guy who was an important part of Utah's Sugar Bowl defense. 50 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, a sack at the Sugar Bowl. He was not just like an also-ran and a guy. He was an important player on that team. And, the article, I encourage you to read it. Go to The Athletic, search Chris Kamrani, search Greg Newman. It's a great, great, great article. And it is sobering, and it's something that's hard to read at parts, and it's going to make you emotional. And there are excerpts in his own handwriting from the journals that he kept that are heavily redacted but still just punch you right in the gut. And then a headline today, fresh off that conversation, that a gunman walked into a New York City office building looking for the NFL offices and killed people in a mass shooting incident. And he had a 3-page note in his pocket about how he thought CTE was something that, people should be paying for, should be punished for. And he never played in the NFL, by the way. We talked about this earlier on the show, but most of you know that there's people in their right mind, and there are people and factors that can pull you out of the right mind. And this individual in New York City, who also is no longer with us, thought that, CTE was to blame for something in his life and was looking for the NFL offices, because the NFL obviously has been the entity most attached to CTE stories in the United States of America. So with all those risks in at least the back of your mind, are you allowing your children to play contact sports? Are you encouraging your children to play contact sports? Maybe you're right down the middle and you're not actively encouraging or discouraging, and you're just kind of seeing how it plays out. 877-353-0700. Tell me. We've had people weigh in and say, look, my son is having too much fun playing football. I'm encouraging it now. Chris Hoop, a guy I know personally, he's been asking me since he was 3 to play football. He's 12, and I finally caved. Original plan was to stick to flag and learn the game until 13 or 14, but figured his game knowledge is ready, so we would give it a go. There's going to be pressure from your kid. There's going to be pressure from other adults. There's going to be, we talked about, James is a big man, for those who don't watch it on the YouTube stream. James is, you're what, 6'3"?
Yeah, 6'2", 6'3", I will say over 200 pounds.
Over 200 pounds. We'll say well over 200 pounds.
Well over 200 pounds.
Which is, like, you see James walk down the street, you'll be like, oh, it's a big guy. It's like it's a football body, right? So you've got a son now, and that will probably at some point
and
be a conversation.
By the way, you mentioned you probably have lots of other big people in your family. Yes, his great grandfather, who passed away about 8 years ago, he played offensive line at BYU.
Okay,
had a try. I learned later, a couple months ago, had a tryout with the New York Jets. He played in the 50s. Can you guess his height and weight, offensive lineman in the 50s?
6'1", 245 pounds.
6'4".
Whoa, huge.
230 something, I think.
Okay, that is giant.
So I'm
50s.
like, so we were talking about the Colorado Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Forget the guy's name, but he was 5'10", under 200 pounds.
Yes.
And an offensive lineman in the same era. So I asked my father-in-law, it was his dad, and I'm like, how big was he when he played? He said he was 6'4", 230 something. He had to try it with the Jets. I'm like, yeah, well, with that size, I'm not surprised. So So anyway, he's got that in his family. We have lots of other athletes in the family, played football and basketball and various other sports. So yeah, the likelihood he's a big guy like me is very it's very likely, and I imagine he's going to get lots of outside pressure, lots of people asking, "Hey, when are you going to start playing football?" And that's going to be I think that's going to be a tough thing for me, and if he really likes it, if he's convinced that he really likes it, I don't think I can stand in the way, but I think that I would rather steer him away from it at this point.
And there is a version of that conversation that probably happens with every parent, every child, over what the activities are. I'm asking the question about sports and contact sports specifically. They've been a huge part of my life. I don't have the career that I have, or the history that I have, or the money that I have, the home that I don't have anything that I have without sports in my life, and specifically contact sports. And combat sports take it to a different level in some ways, but as I've said many times, and I've already said on the show today, I still think football is harder on your brain and body even than getting punched in the face, which is probably counterintuitive for some people, but the physics are just different. And people like me, I'm an idiot. You put a helmet on my head and I start using the helmet as a weapon.
Yeah, they talk about that a lot when comparing football with rugby. Now, you also pointed out that rugby has a lot of problems with head injuries, which makes sense. But there's anecdotally people who have played both sports say rugby tends to be a lot safer because they know that we're more fallible. That rugby players know they're more fallible because they got nothing to use as a weapon and nothing to protect them.
They also they more heavily adjudicate illegal tackles in rugby.
Yeah,
like it's something that the NFL is now.
There's no false security of a helmet and pads in rugby, right?
I've said this many times, and I think if the player safety conversation continues in football, which by the way, it hasn't. The player safety conversation in football has gone away in recent years. At least at the level it was had before. There was so many times I'm talking pre-COVID, where every year you were introducing a new potential rule change to address player safety. Now, the only meaningful, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you have a different opinion here, but now it seems like the kickoff and the rules around the kickoff is sort of the last place that they're willing to make a change in the interest of player safety.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that we've gotten to a point in the NFL in particular where they've said we feel really good about the concussion protocol we put in place since concussions became such a big talking point in the NFL however many years ago. We feel really good about how we've outlawed diving at people's legs and those kind of tackles that end people's seasons because of ankle and knee injuries. We feel really good about the defenseless receiver rules. We think we're in a good place for that. Now that we've started to put our attention on the kickoff, we're starting to feel really good about that. So, okay, players are safe. It feels like that's where we are with that. Safe enough that we want to add a 17th game, which they did, and we want to add an 18th game at some point. It does feel like that's where we are with the NFL.
By the way, the players will fight against until they get paid enough for it, and then they'll agree.
It's going to happen. Particularly the NFL Players Union just has never had the leverage to beat the owners or stop something that the owners really want, really maybe ever in their history, and that's unfortunate from the players' perspective. Other unions, like baseball in particular, have made those kind of grounds in throughout their history, but if there's a union that you just are like, I don't trust that they can get it done, it's the NFL Players Union, unfortunately, for them.
All right. Taking our final break. We'll come back on the Sean O'Connell Show and close things out. Who's doing the drive today?
It is Scott Mitchell all week.
Oh, heck yeah.
And Scott Mitchell, I believe he will be he's out, not on remote and like at a business or anything, but he will not be in studio doing it. He'll be doing it remotely somewhere, so we will not see him for crosstalk today.
That's too bad. Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 792.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, handing the baton to Scott Mitchell, who'll be holding it down for Spence Checketts on the drive today. Scott, what's coming up on the show? Maybe. Maybe. Maybe not. Never mind. Well, Scott Mitchell's going to be on the drive today. We won't get a chance to talk to him, but I will let that question hang in the ether. What's coming up on the drive today? Scott Mitchell filling in for Spence Checketts. The only way for you to know is to listen on ESPN 792.1 FM, or if you don't catch it live, you can always find us on the app at ESPN 700 Sports Utah on YouTube. You can find the on-demand section at ESPN700sports.com. My point is that you are able to find whatever you need from a broadcasting standpoint on demand if you can't catch it live. Had a fun show today chatting with Gordy Chiesa as the basketball cycle winds down. Next week will be our last check-ins with Gordy as we really gear up for football season and the preview of football season. And then, of course, we'll catch up with him when basketball's back. Jerem Jordan joined us for our official Red and Blue segment. We'll get more of that as the season progresses. Utah BYU on October 18th is going to be a hell of a game. Hopefully a large contingent of Utah fans can make the trip down to Provo. And you have not just my permission or my blessing, my encouragement to make sure while you're there to go ahead and grab a cougar tail. All right? Maybe they'll do take some red food coloring with you and just slather it on that cougar tail to make it a red donut.
I like your suggestion from a few weeks ago. I think it was when Brian and I were filling in for you. Mm-hmm. Smuggle some jam in, make it a bloody cougar tail.
Let's go.
Smuggle some Smuckers.
You know what I was told, by the way? We talked about
strawberry jam or something.
You can no longer get the cougar tail bratwurst. They don't sell it anymore. They don't do it anymore.
I never actually tried the cougar tail bratwurst. I'm disappointed.
It was unbelievably delicious.
I've been to a fair amount of BYU games over the years and had a number of cougar tails. I did not know that was an option before.
I think I've only been in the last since college. I've only been to 2 BYU games, and at one of them I got one, and it was wonderful. But I guess it's not an option. It hasn't been for a long time. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Another reason to be mad at BYU. Okay. Whatever.
Yeah. Where you at on that one, Jerem Jordan? Come on. Thank you for listening to the show today. Thank you to everyone who participated in the poll and sent your feedback on our start bench cut. Let's do it again tomorrow. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN.